Okay, we're live. This is MC1 Gamer bringing you another Unlocking Age of Sigmar video. This time we're doing the Vampire Counts, and I'm joined by Thomas Lyons. Is it Lyons? Is that
It is. It is Lions. That is
okay?
correct. Yep.
Excellent, excellent. If you don't know Thomas, you should. He's one of the hosts for Warhammer Weekly, along with Vince Ventrilla. And thank you very much for joining me again, Thomas.
Yeah, absolutely. It's my pleasure.
Or is it Tom?
I really go by either, so I have a multitude of names and nicknames. So
great. So I know that you started up a Vampire Counts army. I think you got it on a really good deal when somebody bailed on Warhammer, and after Age of Sigmar got announced. And why don't you before we jump into all this, why don't you go and tell us a little bit about that?
it's so embarrassing. So like I buy and resell stuff all the time, and like I was encouraging people on Warhammer Weekly, like don't lose your mind, don't sell all your stuff for crazy amounts. And so I checked Craigslist, and there was it looked like a fairly good deal about 2 hours away from me. And so I messaged the guy, and it's like I didn't want to pay what he had. Like it included a full set, like the ultimate paint set of Citadel. Okay, so I mean, like when I said he had a lot, like he had a lot. And so I messaged him, and but I didn't know what like state that paint set was in. And so what I ended up doing was, to make a long story short, I sent him an offer. He declined. I said, okay, that's fine. 2 weeks later, he messaged me and he said, hey, are you still interested? And I said, yeah. And he said, here's the current price. And I was like, well, if I'm going to drive that way, would you come down to this? And so I ended up paying like $175. And like when I got there and picked everything up, I didn't realize what he had actually had because his listing was unclear. Okay, I felt bad because like he had said like the 3 more charge box, in his Craigslist, and I was like, okay, sure. And almost everything was new in box. So I get there and he actually had like 3 boxes of the Morcharks.
All 3?
All 3.
Oh my God, that's great.
And a mostly painted Nagash, and the Morghast, and like it was just this. So like driving home, I did the mental math, and like retail was like $1,500.
Wow! Oh my God! I mean, did you say anything to him, or
Well, I did, because again, like I hadn't done the retail, like I knew it was a good deal, but I didn't realize what I had actually gotten until like I was driving away and started actually doing the mental math. And I said, yeah, are you sure? And he said, yeah, I need to get out of it. And and my wife just wants it gone. And I said, are you sure? And he said, yes. Okay. So, I asked him like 3 times. So
you did your due diligence, man,
Yeah. And I texted him afterwards, even talking about paints and colors and how to match some of the stuff that he had used. And so like, I was in open dialogue with him, like if he was wanted to renege on it at any point in time, and he never did. So
this is just an example for anybody out there who's still holding on to your armies, who, if you're still playing 8th edition, wonderful. If you're in with 9th edition, 9th age, and you're part of that movement, that's fine too. There's nothing wrong with that. If you decided that you're not moving on to Age of Sigmar, though, you really should consider the value of what you have. There are people
don't
who buy it.
Sell your stuff.
I know.
Don't do it.
Don't do it. I've bought a couple of things myself, and I've gotten really good deals, but I haven't gotten anything close to that. But I don't want to rip anyone off. I mean, but if they're willing to part with it for that price, I mean, that's
and it was in like a very like rural area of Southern Ohio, so there's like likely no one else that he was selling to, and he was only selling on Craigslist. And so yeah, like I said, I interacted with him quite a bit, both before and after the sale. And he never once wanted, it was like, hey, I'm not interested. So, I'm interested in, possibly, getting my stuff back. In nothing. He wanted out, and he was washing his hands of it. So
you're gain, and you have now a huge Vampire Counts army. Which
I do. And the funny thing is that like a lot of the pure VC stuff I've like shipped off to one of my other friends who's doing pure VC, because I actually have done more of an Undead Legions army. And where you've converted everything to Vampire Counts, I've converted everything to VC or to TK. Yeah. So like I have a Black Knight, I have a bits box of like assembled all the bits for like 15 Black Knights, like Tomb King with like Tomb Herald, or not Tomb Herald, like like Tomb Guard heads and the whole ordeal. So,
yeah. And just to give people who, I mean, I have a bunch of new subscribers since Age of Sigmar has come out. So just to go back, anybody who's viewing this, if you haven't been with me for the past year or two, and you haven't looked back in some of my old videos on bat reps, I have a series that I haven't really revisited, but I'm going to be revisiting again very soon, which is called Convert This, with a big exclamation point. It's kind of a tongue-in-cheek on the analyze this De Niro movies, because it's very New York, New Jersey, whatever, which is where I live. And so they convert this with a little bit of attitude, which is really just an exercise in how can we, what can you do with a model, how can you convert it. And it's my journey going through just converting my entire Vampire Counts army, which is a form of insanity, by the way, because I have probably about 300 zombies, probably about 100 skeletons, and a whole slew. If you don't know, I'm going to give you the real quick, just like what Tom said. He's doing kind of the Tomb Kings version of this. I've been working on, since I've gotten back into Warhammer, a Musalin army, which is a Bretonnian themed Vampire Counts army, and I've taken elements of the Tomb Kings in so that I could, for the Undead Legions, especially when End Times occurred. But everything is Bretonnian based. Even my Hex Wraiths, they're not Hex Wraiths from the box. They're Bretonnian Knights with all the skeletal bits converted for the skeletal horse, and they're basically my own version. I didn't even use the Questing Knights, the metal. I made my own. And just like Tom is doing on the TK side, that's my army. Even all my Vargeists are all bat-winged Pegasus Knights. They're my fell bats are fell Pegasi. They're fallen Pegasi. So go back and look, if you're interested in that kind of stuff, you'll see all these great conversions. I love them, but it's a very unique army, and it's still in progress. And even to the point of my Coven Throne and Mortis Engine have little bits of Bretonnian heads on them. Any case, I love Vampire Counts, and it's really great that we have this kind of interaction, because I really liked the synergy with Undead Legions, which everybody lost their minds about. And little did they realize the next End Times books, steadily the power creep continued on from there, and they got even better, book by book. But now we're in Age of Sigmar, and we have a whole new slew of stuff. And there is even more synergy with the Tomb Kings and the Vampire Counts, which I love. We're going to be doing another video, just so you know, and I'll probably have you and Vince on that. I'd love to have both of you guys on that. We'll talk about how those two armies really can combine. But yeah, you were saying, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was really fearful. I have a lot of niche armies, and so when I did Tomb Kings, I was all about with the Undead Legions, and so I had a bunch of stuff that I'm converting over from Vampire Counts to Tomb Kings. And so when the scrolls launched, I was like, man, this is going to be a big, this is a crapshoot, because if there's not synergy between the two armies, I have a bunch of models that I'm not going to be able to use. And, one of the first scrolls that I looked at was Orcs and Goblins, which we went over recently, and which is a great podcast. I'd encourage you to check out Mitch's our coverage of that. But if you remember from that army, everything was ghettoized. So Night Goblins only grouped with Night Goblins. And so even within the actual Orcs and Goblins scroll themselves, there was no synergy. There was no overlap. And so, man, let me tell you, when I cracked open Tomb Kings, I was in Vampire Counts. I was scared, because I was afraid this is what was going to happen, is it was going to be this super ghettoized. And the reality is it couldn't be farther from the truth. Yeah. These two, go ahead.
Go ahead. Finish your thoughts. Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, these two PDFs could literally be merged almost without any gap between them. There is so much synchronicity between these two armies. It is ridiculous.
Yeah. And I want to open up before we get into this War Scrolls, just to give if you've seen some of the series with some of these PDF unlockings that I've been doing, and I've had a number of people on, and this is the second time I've had Tom on. The main crux of it is we're looking at just the main units. We're going to talk about Nagash, because he is literally the 800-pound gorilla in the room. And but we're not going to go too deeply into the special characters unless we have extra time. I'd like to do it as a separate video. There's just so many characters in, and I'm going to do that with each of these armies. But the idea is here is we're going to look at, you know, the army, the actual units themselves. We're going to talk about, you know, how they might work with each other. There's some really nice synergies with vampire counts. There's certainly going to be some, we'll leave for another video with Tomb Kings. But what you're saying about the kind of with the ghettoization, I think to explain that further, you know, maybe you can explain what you mean by that, Tom, just in case somebody hasn't tuned in prior.
Yeah, so with most of these army scrolls, there are sub-factions within each army. So, for example, orcs and goblins, there's very clear sub-factions between like the orcs, savage orcs, normal goblins, night goblins, and forest goblins. And like never the two shall ever meet in that, you know, like if you have a commander, their command ability is only going to benefit their sub-faction. It almost never do you see the command abilities extending beyond a small group. And so that's what I'm talking about when I talk about ghettoization, where it's not like that across all armies. So for example, high elves and dark elves, they benefit generally almost all the models in that army book. High elves have highborn, dark elves have exiles, and that's the key word for all of the high elf and dark elf units. And generally, like all the commanders touch everybody in the unit most of the time with their command abilities. That is not the case with orcs and goblins. But the vampire counts, we see the exact opposite of even the limitation to, like, so the key word that they're actually touching, and you're going to see this again and again, this is why I want to talk about Nagash, is death. Yeah. Death casters or death units. Well, guess what? That's the entire faction. That's not just that war scroll. Yeah. And that's huge for army building.
Well, we do see some compartmentalization within the Vampire Counts book, and we'll get to that, especially when we look at some of the actual formations. But even within the book itself, there are some breakouts. But we'll certainly get to that. I just want to mention one thing. You know, I've done some of these videos, and people have wanted to ask questions and respond. I will do whatever I can to catch up with that. Obviously, we don't want this to be a 3-hour hangout for a variety of reasons. I mean, where we are, it's it's 11:30 Eastern-ish, and I think you're an hour behind me.
No, I'm at the same time, and my kids start kindergarten tomorrow morning.
Okay, so we'll try to be brief, and if you do have to bail at any point early, I'll keep it going. But one of the things I don't know why I'm not seeing the stream of questions that people. Comments that people are putting up, but I am getting the email. So if you do post it, I will get an email alert. I'll try to get to those. If we can't get to them, I try to respond after the fact. I might not get to every one of these. So we'll do our best. Okay. But we want to try and cover a lot of ground and try not to have this, you know, go till 2 a.m. So you wanted to open up talking about Nagash. Everybody wants to talk about Nagash. Matter of fact, people who have negative things to say about Age of Sigmar, the first thing they do is they talk about Nagash. It's been the sticking point with a lot of conversations even when Nagash first came back with the end times, and I think that he's actually more ridiculous in Age of Sigmar. So go ahead, Tom. Let's start out just with him, and then we'll move on to the actual units.
You are absolutely correct. Like, this dude is bonkers on 11. Okay, like there are very few other units that are throwing around. Actually, let me say this: there are no other units that are throwing around 6 spells per level. Slann, the Masters of Magic, are throwing around 3. Teclis is throwing around 3. So I mean we're talking about, like, this dude is casting 6 extra. He has +3 to cast, +3 to unbind. This is right out of the gate, obviously, as he starts to lose wounds. He's clocking in at 16 wounds. He's tied basically with the Soul Grinder, and the only other person that has higher wounds in all of the War Scrolls at this point is the Glotkin. He's sitting at a 3-up save that if you sit him on a piece of terrain, he goes to 2-up. And he knows he can cast 6 spells around, and he knows the Mystic Shield, which means that if he's sitting on a terrain, he casts that spell, he can only be touched by mortal wounds. Standard wounds will not do anything to him because he will save out of everything.
Or big Rens.
Or huge Rens. That's true. That's true. And then the other half of that, though, is that his armor, mortal wounds aren't the solution because he has armor that gives him a 4-up ward against mortal wounds.
One of the few real ward saves in the game. Yes, there are some.
Well, no, but it's not a true ward save because it doesn't work for normal wounds. It's only mortal wounds.
Oh, I did not.
That his armor.
Well, he's got
Yeah.
his regular save for that. He doesn't need that. He needs
Exactly.
he needs a stopgap for mortal wounds, which is rampant throughout Age of Sigmar.
Yeah, and you know, like, and that 6, like that 4-up, if he rolls a 6 on that, like that pseudo ward save, it actually reflects back a mortal wound on the target that attacked him. So I mean, he is literally turned up to 11. He doubles the unit size of whatever he summons, which is a death unit, which can be anything from his scroll or the Tomb King's scroll. He's packing 2 unique spells, and you know, the thing that really gets me out of all of this is his Lord of Death ability.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because like all this is fantastic and it's ridiculous, and you know, it's to a degree, for the size and beauty of his model, it's what one would expect. But the command ability, it catches my eye because it's, when you use it, it's all death units in your army, okay? Which includes, let me point out, all of Tomb Kings. Again, this is the entire faction that he is buffing. And it's re-rolling hit and save rolls of 1 for all death units in your army. And you don't need to take battle shock tests. Now, generally, that's not an issue for most undead units. Most undead units are clocking in at 10 bravery anyways. They have to take massive losses before battle shock starts to really become an issue. But that said, he rolls in, and there's no range on this. It's just everyone in your army, period. No battle shock. Reroll hit rolls of 1, save rolls of 1.
Let me just interrupt you just for 1 second, because I want to get back to you going down the list of all the powers.
I'm done. That's it.
No. There's probably going to be more to discuss. I don't want to spend half an hour on the gash, but let's just establish here, before anybody gets, panics or gets upset. This is a character. First of all, Age of Sigmar, it's not meant for comp. If you want to comp it and that's the way you want to play, go for it. Knock yourself out. But if there's things that you want to do on limiting some of the crazy, that's fine. But I just need to establish really very heavily here. This is one of the massive heavyweights of the game. And in kind, he is going to be ridiculously powerful. He's meant to be. And I'm sure we're going to see things somewhere down the road that are going to match that. There's some things that haven't been released yet that I'm sure that are going to I mean, he still exists in the Age of Sigmar, millennia past the end times and past the old world. But let me talk about out of game stuff for a second. First of all, it's always been a social contract situation in friendly games, in going into your friendly local game store. You should always, no matter whether you're using the gosh or not, you should always be entertaining that conversation. It doesn't take very long to talk about really quickly what kind of game you're playing, especially if you're playing somebody new. So before everybody gets ramps up the conversation as far as how crazy he is, this is a kind of character that's really going to only be for special type of scenarios, situations where you're playing with somebody that you either have a relationship with, the style of play, that they know it's coming, and even if they don't, you should probably let them know. And I think that's for certain types of games, regardless of whether you're playing the gosh. If you're playing 6 giants, if you're playing 4 dragons, it's going to be that kind of level of crazy compared to older versions of Warhammer. So I just want to put that to rest. The second thing I want to say is, as powerful as Nagash is, and he is tough, he is very tough. He is a tough nut to crack, but there are some big characters that can drop him in one turn. Let me just say this. There are lots of units just with their crazy multiple attacks and maybe extra rends that will drop Nagash. He is a monster, and as a result, he is going to diminish as he is wounded. And there are so many things that can wound you. Yes, he's got a Forp save versus mortal wounds, but there's a lot of things that give him that dish out mortal wounds. And as a result, he's going to take some wounds, because if you put enough shot attacks on him, he will take those hits. And as he diminishes, he'll get a little bit weaker. You could take Nagash down with a unit of 40, of clan rats. You could take, I mean, if he's sitting at a 1-up save, no, but you still could take 40 guys and whittle him down little by little. And if you can deny him the ability to move and fly, there are things you can do to take this guy down with rank and file models. That being said, it is going to be a big damn challenge. But a couple of cannon shots, a few, there's plenty of things that could still drop this guy. So let's just try to be realistic. Age of Sigmar is the most killy game that I have played in the recent years. You just have everything can do damage to everything. All right,
Yep.
just based on volume, and you roll enough dice, you're going to fail enough armor saves. So now, with that being said, you were saying he can get 6 spells off a turn. Now, I've read it only twice. I've only gone through it twice. I also want to say this. I'm one of those nutcases that convert everything. I'm converting my entire army. I'm one of the first people and one of the few people that actually took a Nagash, ripped them apart, put them back together, took bits and whatever, and I just made it my own Nagash. I mean, he has a lot of the model, which is a little bit insane again. But I'm not going to see him on the table very often. But I went and I did this. So I'm gonna have at least one battle report with him. I mean, come on.
Well,
you spend that much money and that much time, you're going to be playing with him, but it's going to be with the right person. I want to ask you about the spells because the amount of spells that he can. Oh, if you have a point before we actually even get to that.
Yeah, I wanted to go back to the social contract statement. So somebody had brought up in a prior thread in one of Mitch's videos recently that, well, what about, does this mean that I can just take a huge block of Blood Knights and just because he's talking about balance, and just dominate and own the enemy and blah, blah, blah. And, I had responded to that post, and I think it's relevant to bring up here that you can do that. But the reality is that if your opponent doesn't want to talk social contract with you before the game, and they want to start laying down 4 or 5 heroes and big blocks of 40 Blood Knights and a huge block of 100 Graveguard and all that, they want to play a certain type of game, and they want a certain type of experience. And I have no problem humiliating those people. So, no, and what I mean by that is they are violating this. Well, they are violating a social contract that they don't care about the fun of the other player. And the reality is that one of my frustrations with Age of Sigmar is not actually with Age of Sigmar. It's the fact that people aren't actually playing the game as it's written. And you brought this up with comp.
I know I've had this battle with a lot of people, and
because
I end it by saying just play the way you want.
The game balances itself as written. Because here's the reality: if somebody begins to lay something like that, there's a very simple solution to that. You go grab Nagash. There are a couple of different armies that do this. Vampire counts as one of them. High Elves is one of them. Vampire counts as one of this. Yeah. So you lay Nagash. And we'll get to this later, but you lay a corpse cart, you lay a Mortis engine, and you lay a Tomb of Souls, and you get +3 to all your death casters. Okay, so that means you always auto cast Arcane Bolt, and then you just lay 30 to 40 Lich Priests.
Yeah, but I'm not looking to try to create the killiest list, and I know where you're going with this. I totally get it. I actually misunderstood when I responded. If somebody wants to try and have that steamroll effect without even having the conversation, and they didn't get their butts kicked, they've asked for it. Now, mind you, the bottom line here is this: is that no matter how tough your list is, no matter how crazy your combination is, every army has something like that.
Yep.
Okay. Every time I do one of these videos, and every time I go and I do the homework beforehand just to look through them, I'm finding wow, this is bonkers. No matter what singular model you put on the table, there's things out there that will obliterate it potentially in one turn.
Yep.
All right. So regardless of what you're thinking, if you want to put in 50 Blood Knights, if you have the models, you better have the models or a good conversion for it. But if you want to do something crazy, there is going to be on the other side of the table the potential to destroy that too. There's no impossible list. And one of the journeys that we're all taking, that thank you, Tom, for coming with me, and all of you viewers out there, is that we're trying to just find what that is, not for competitive purposes, not to ruin anybody's time, just to see what the potential is. And then wherever you're playing, you could decide to change rules if you have different opinions on summoning, which I don't want to get into today. We may hit upon it, but we're not going to go and debate it endlessly because it's an ongoing debate where some people just can't let it go. But the bottom line is this: you're going to play the way you want, play the way you want. If you're playing with the crazy superpowers of the game, fine. If you're playing with lots of giants and monsters and crazy stuff, fine. If you want to stick to more of a rank and file game, you can do it. It's freedom. Just like Braveheart, freedom. You have all the freedom in the world. So I want to get back to the interpretation of his spell casting, because the way it reads is that initially he has 3 spells, but he can boost it up to 6. So tell us.
He has 4. He has 2 unique spells and then the 2 core spells. And basically, what I take away from this is it's depending on him to actually rely on being granted summon spells.
Mm-hmm.
To like if you want to go for your full 6 spells.
Yeah, and the way that we both agree on, and the way that this game is built, some people are disagreeing with this. So you play the way you want. I'm going to establish this. Is that if you look at the War Scrolls, the logical way that this is built, this is not an arm. I did a video on it, so I don't want to go into a whole tirade here. But the way that this is not built with army book fashion. This is built based on War Scrolls. So I'm even seeing some little variants on this when I looked at the Wood Elf book, for example. There's one unit that kind of even explains that, where it says you can summon this unit while this unit is on the battlefield. So we'll get to that when I get to the Wood. But the bottom line is the way we're interpreting, I think we're of similar mind, is that you can summon stuff only if you have that unit on the table, because there's not a single wizard in the Vampire accounts and the Tomb Kings that have a summoning mechanic on the War Scroll. So when you take a unit that then grants them the summoning mechanic, if you feel that that's different, anybody out there who doesn't like it, just play the way you want. It's fine. Okay.
Yeah, I want to clarify that, by the way. It's not just other summoning spells it's filling out. There is a clause at the end of his magic which says that as well as any other spells known to death wizards on the battlefield.
Right.
So he's actually like, if you have a necromancer, if you have Manfred, damn it, Manfred, if you have if you have Nephrata, like he's picking up all of their unique spells as well.
Yeah, let's just pick him to the 11, like you said. It's 211.
Yeah, don't bring this character to a friendly game unless you've both agreed upon it. Like, that's what I want to say. We can move on now.
Right, cool. I'm going to be doing it. You're going to see it. I'm going to be doing it with people that are going to know in advance, and I'm going to explain that. I want to test this guy out. I want to see how broken he can be, and you, my opponent, whoever that is going to bring whatever you think is absolutely crazy, knowing that he's going to be there. So let's move on. We'll go to the War Scrolls, just because I think we spent a lot of time in Nagash. He warrants some time. He warrants a little bit of a conversation. But I'm gonna spend a lot more in-depth time talking about him when we have an episode where we're specifically talking about the special characters.
Well, he's the first. Let me just say though, I don't like kind of a bigger scale. He's the first true god we've seen. Okay. Because we have Alariel and Teclis and Tyrion in the Elf Scrolls, but those are just conversions of the elf characters from the 8th edition book. Like Alariel, that's not the Alariel incarnate of life that we had at the end of End Times. That's like Alariel the Everqueen.
Right.
And so we don't know what the Teclis, Tyrion, and Alariel turned up to 11 look like now.
Which I'm sure will be comparable, just like they were in End Times. Yeah. On the table, on the other side of Nagash, End Times, they were comparable. They weren't, you could make arguments on who was more powerful, but there were combinations that certainly put them in the same league, without a doubt. Like I said, there's more stuff that's going to be launched, more stuff that's going to be released, and we'll see probably plenty of other crazy stuff. My feeling is that with Age of Sigmar being it really just begs for scenarios. It begs for a narrative. It begs for chains of games that connect to each other. There's a mechanic for triumphs that's just saying to you, play one game and have it affect the other. There's the scenario books, which I have the first one already, and the next one I'm going to have before the end of the week. And so tune in, because I'll be doing a preview of that. Not a preview, but I'll be going through it when I finally have it in hand. And the bottom line is this: I don't think Nagash should be on the table anyway, unless you have some kind of a story around him. Why would the god of death and undeath basically show up unless he's got a really good reason? Part of that reason could be, hey, he wants to get, like you mentioned, I think in one of the Warhammer Weekly shows, vengeance against the rats. I would love to play that, and I do have a local friend who's a big Skaven player, and that's probably what we're going to do. If it's not
make it happen,
if it's not already in one of the scenario books, we're going to do that.
Yep,
bet on it. Okay, let me go ahead and share the my desktop, and we'll go and start. We're gonna skip. We're gonna go just whatever the order is, and we'll talk about synergies and the like. So let me go and screen share here. Alrighty. And then Got that. Hold on. I got to just do this. Yeah, because I still want to see what's happening here. All right. How's that?
Looks great.
All right. Sorry for the craziness of. I still haven't gotten that down to a science yet. All right. So let's go. Let's start with the Morghast. Is it? How would you pronounce this? Harbingers or harbingers? Harbingers.
I would describe. Harbinger. Harbinger. Yeah.
Okay, that's how I've been pronouncing it. But I've been wrong before. Okay, let you take the Harbingers. I'll take the Archai.
Okay, absolutely. I love these guys. 6 wounds. They're just fantastic monstrous infantry. 4-up save. They have a great number of attacks. 5 attacks, 3-up, 3-up, -1 rend, 2 damage. They're just beefy, like just fantastic models. They have good charges. They're throwing 3d6 instead of 2d6 on a charge, and much like their brothers, the Archai, we'll see in just a moment. They're increasing the +1 to death to casting spells that summon death units within 18 inches. So, like, I had alluded to a couple other things that increase casting. Like, there's so much that increases casting in this army list, and then in the Tomb King's army list. It's pretty It's an embarrassment of riches for casters.
I put a unit of 4 of these on the table, and they munched through. And I'm just having put up the battle report. They munched through a unit of Stormcast Eternals, and I think I didn't even lose one. I think he was down to maybe 1 or 2 wounds. That's 6 wounds. You can have any number. You could have 1. You could have 6. If you're in a comp situation and you limit some of the wounds per unit, that's fine. These guys do some serious damage. 5 attacks.
These guys are almost the equivalent of a White Lion chariot. Let me just say that. Like, I ran a White Lion list just this last weekend, and White Lion lists are 6 wounds, 4-up save. They have 4 attacks at 3-up, 3-up, -1 rend, 1 damage. So they're only doing 1 damage, and then the lion attacks, which are worse than the actual White Lions themselves. And literally each one of these is the equivalent of White Lion chariot, and it can fly.
And it can fly. And can the White Lion chariot do 3d6 charge?
No, it's only 2 dice. Like, these guys are beastly.
They're ridiculous.
Yes. 2
wounds, 2 damage, and then you still have a minor -1 wet rend. Oh,
Yep.
Just crazy. Okay. The fact that you can summon 3 of them. No, excuse me, 2 of them. Mm-hmm. 2 of them in a unit when you summon them, and it's a modest casting cost of 7, but even with a +1 that you're almost surely going to have with the various units here. The nice thing is you can move these guys up, get them within range of wherever your caster is. You can even put them forward in the threat range forward with your forward moving, the units that are marching across the battlefield, and they still will be in range of maybe a sneaky wizard necromancer you have hiding behind a hill in the back of your deployment zone to give them a +1.
Or in a zombie block. Thank you, 2d6.
Yes, very much. Yes, the zombie square.
Yep, the zombie square. Yes.
All right. So the different versions with this is one of them has more attacks, but I think that the major difference is where you sacrifice a couple of attacks with the Archai, you get a little bit more damage and a better rend. So they're almost the exact same. I think you're getting a little bit better
better defense.
Yes.
You remember that armor that Nagash had that we talked about that was 4-up, that was mortal wounds?
Yes.
The Archai has the same stuff, but it's 5-up.
Oh, it's a couple of plates from Nagash's stockpile. Yeah, these guys are, and they've got a 2-inch range. Let me see if the 2.
No, they're 1 inch.
1 inch on the Harbingers, but the Archai 2-inch. 2-inch range. So these are the 2-handed ones. These are ones with the halberds. Yeah.
Yep. These are the ones I have built. and I'm glad. I prefer these to the double weapons.
Yeah, because the -2 rend is just killer, and you make up for it with also the damage having a few less attacks. In my opinion, it's a matter of preference. But yes, I agree that you put all those things together, and then you have the extra defense with the Ebonwrought armor. I would much rather have these guys. I've actually used my the models that I use for my that I've converted up for Vargeist. I've been using for these guys. And that's because they're basically knights on on these winged horses, these nightmares, but they have like a lance, so it kind of makes up for the halberd. But that's just a conversion. I say pick up at least 6 of these.
Whew. That would be a scary block. I mean, that's like running a Tomb King chariot block.
That's not how I would do it. I would roll 4 of them on the table, because even with some of the most common comps, I'm seeing 24, 25 wound caps. And I'm going to mention this, guys. I don't like comp. I don't like it, but I'm just telling you what I'm relaying. I see people starting to impose out there in organized efforts. In your own friendly games, it doesn't matter. I don't think comp is necessary in this game. Like you said, it polices itself, and there's lots of reasons why. I'm going to do a video on that too somewhere down the road. But 4 of them gives you that 24 wounds, okay? Plus you got 2 for summoning. That's why I want to have 6. That's my theory.
That's fair.
Anyway, that's just me. You could take 10 if you want. All right, let's bypass some of these characters. Yeah, we're going to spend a lot of time on these guys. Okay, Vampire Lord. I'll let you go take it. There's one thing that I kind of wanted to mention on the Vampire Lord before we get to this, and that's we do lose one thing with the Vampire Lord, and that is the ability to be mounted on a was it a hell beast? Not a hell beast, a hell steed, where you could basically take what is basically like almost like a fallen Pegasus. And that is gone from the entire war scroll, and it's unfortunate because some of my conversions took that into consideration. But it really doesn't matter, because you could still take the Vampire Lord and the Abyssal Terror. So I'll go and I'll talk about the Abyssal Terror. Why don't you go and talk about the Vampire Lord?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's worth mentioning that even though they did lose that, technically, like you still gain, like you can have them one with a fly. Does that make sense? So even if you have one modeled on a Pegasus, it's still appropriate, because like it's a model that flies, move 10.
Right. You just wouldn't have the extra attacks.
Sure.
The hooves and teeth.
Yeah. Maybe the Pegasus is not that intelligent of an undead. No, but it's. I mean, he's a great lord. He has a pretty fantastic damage he's thrown around. He heals wounds when he kills models. He's a wizard, so you don't often have both a model that's both a wizard and a commander, and he is. Notice his command ability. It's death units again. It's death units within 15 inches. Models in that unit make 1 extra attack with their melee weapons until your next hero phase, which is solid. I mean, bumping up skeleton attacks. Like that all adds up.
Yes.
So now that said, I'd probably throw it on my Morghast.
Yeah. It first of all, you only can pick 1 unit when you cast the Blood Feast, but it's 15 inches. That's not bad, and that 1 extra attack will come into play with even the most crappy units. And we'll talk about that with synergies down the road. I really like this command ability. Anything that gives you extra attacks for everything in a unit is going to be monstrous. And wait, to coin a phrase, because I know Andy and Remy were saying it, it's tremendously powerful.
Yes. Yeah, and his spell, lets him do something that not a lot of spells do, and it's cut the number of attacks that are being output from a unit.
Yeah, that is good. It's a long range on it too.
Yeah, 18 inches. So like I think about I've been playing High Elves recently, just this last weekend, and so like I think about they're all the core units of High Elves, like the really elite stuff. Swordmasters, White Lions, and Phoenix Guard are all swinging 2 attacks at 3 up. And like this cuts their attacks in half. Like that's huge to cut a unit like that's the number of attacks they're swinging around.
Yeah, I think he's not as killy in terms of just the power that you would put into a Vampire Lord in the previous edition, where you could just make that Blender Lord. He's not a Blender Lord anymore. He is powerful. He is tough. You got a lot of attacks. You're doing die 3 damage and with a -1 rend. He's just not going to put out the same kind of craziness that you had previously. But that combination of maybe you could really have an impact on a battle if you take away one of their attacks. Again, it's the minimum of one, but then you can also add attacks to yours. That is crippling.
Yeah. He will swing a battle by his participation there.
Yeah, and the way I would use him would be I would pick and choose where I'd put him in to do some damage, but I would be using that enhancement, that double enhancement, sitting back and being able to maneuver with fly where you want to be, and stay within range to do that is key. Now, here's the benefit of taking him on foot. He's a smaller profile, so you can hide him much more easily. Now, I know that's kind of silly. You know, Vampire Lord, everybody thinks that he should be in the front, the thick of the fight. Maybe he should be, but there's so much you could do with him, just keeping him out of the cannon shot. You know, maybe only rock lobbers or trebuchet or stuff like that are going to have that indirect fire to go after him, or ambushers and stuff like that. But because you can't hide this guy in a unit, he is going to be. People are going to look at this as being the main target for any ranged attack or anything like that. So you probably want to let him survive a little bit, at least long enough so he can get those abilities off.
But with a fly range 10, you can land him in any terrain, and he is always within range of his own Mystic Shield. So he is literally a strategic movement and a 6 DC spell, casting value spell, away from having a 2-up save.
Yeah, I wouldn't use his own Mystic Shield because then you can't use Spirit Blight. He only can cast one spell. So I'd have a baby caster, some other secondary caster Mystic Shield him.
But if you're staring down a gun line, or you're talking about like having to fear range attacks, again, like he's literally one cast away from a 2-up save.
Right, which is nothing to sneeze at because he's even with a -2 rend is not common. Yes, I agree. All right, Vampire Lord on Abyssal Terror. Now I got to say, I kind of like the Blood Feast command ability of the guy, the other Vampire Lord, better than this one's. But you get a lot of bonuses for this one. Certainly, you get a couple more wounds. You get many more attacks because your mount is much more killy. You still have that hunger ability. He can fly. His basic defense goes up because he has this ancient shield for 3-up.
Which is crazy.
Yes.
Let me just say that. That's crazy. Think about this. I was just talking about him being one cast away on terrain from a 2-up save. You stick this dude on terrain, he's a cast away from a 1-up save.
Right. You better have some rend.
Yeah.
And he's got 8 wounds. So yeah. And he gets a little bit extra move on the 12, which is nice. What you're on a charge, he's getting a little bit extra damage, which is always big. I like him. I like the Hellish Vigor too. They double their move. If you get the successful cast, one unit gets to double its move. I think the command ability is okay. I just would prefer the one where you get the extra attack. So in this one, the Vampire Lord it uses his ability. Then until your next hero phase, enemy units must roll an extra dice and discard the lowest if they take a battle shock test within 6 inches of this model. You know what? That's nice. But the truth is you're going to have a lot of units, like fodder units, that are going to lose a lot of wounds and probably take lots of battle shock tests. But everything in this army is a 10 bravery. And if you lose a few, you can gain them back. I wouldn't really use this that much. And we'll go over that when we get to what the standards do, when we get to the rank and file troops, and how you really kind of regenerate a lot of stuff in vampire counts. I just think it's a waste of a command ability. You're losing a little bit of your command ability to get a lot of this other stuff. Yes, 1-up save is crazy, but I would like that command ability for the guy on foot much better, or on a steed. Any other thoughts?
No, I think you got it.
Okay. Now you get the Coven Throne. Go for it, because this is going to be. You think that? Oh God, just go.
It's such a beautiful model. Let me just start there. It's a fantastic model. One thing that I'll just say from the outset, it disappointed me that the Vampire Lord on the Coven Throne is gone. So this Coven Throne perpetually has a vampire on it, but it's a kind of a caster, a Lamnian vampire. So. For whatever that's worth.
It's still there, but it's one of those at the back of the PDF where it says use this profile for.
Yeah, so it's undifferentiated basically.
Right.
I just all around I love it. I love the Coven Throne. Being able to choose a dice to re-roll at any point during the game from laying this model out on the table is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how often you're actually going to see this happen, but being able to not only to kill a model, an enemy hero with your attack that is a 1 attack only 3 up 4 up with no rend. It's going to be fairly rare. But man, if that blood kiss ever happens, that is going to be a day to remember.
Yes.
Obviously summoning another vampire lord because you've raised the one of the enemy heroes.
Yeah, save this attack till you've really wounded something, and then finish it off.
And try to snake it with the kiss. Yeah, absolutely. The spell is pretty fantastic. There's not a lot. There's not a lot that shuts off other people, and this Beguile is one of those things. You roll 3d6. If it's over their bravery, that target can't. That whoever you hit with that spell can't target the caster with attacks or spells until your next hero phase. So you see like an Emmerich on Dragon roll up on this Coven Throne, and the Coven Throne is like, nope. Throw 6. If they can get over like the 8 or whatever bravery with 3d6, which let me tell you, averages say it's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Then you just shut down that enemy, which is just fantastic.
Yeah, I also think you should be, if you're going up against the Coven Throne, you should be saving your own binds for that ability, no doubt. Absolutely. The command ability is if the Lamnian vampire atop the Coven Throne uses ability and the dice rolled at the start of the next battle round is a tie, you decide who will take the first round in the battle round. Again, there's very few things in this game that let you control and tinker with the turns, and this is one of those. The thing about the Coven Throne is it's operating in a bunch of design mechanics that aren't normal design mechanics that you see played with. Free re-rolls just floating around. Being able to decide who takes turns, killing heroes and raising up other heroes in their place. Yeah. Shutting down, so what I would say is that this thing is batting at 11 because of all the unique things it's bringing to the table. Yeah, I'm getting some emails with people's comments. I'm going to go and approach them when we get maybe further on down. We'll come back to them and look at them en masse. I do want to say a shout out to my buddy George, who's watching, who just put out a comment though, and his was that the Vampire Lord on an Abyssal Tower is an assault hero, like the old Vampire Lord used to be. Yes, the roles for the Vampire Lord are different now. I agree with him 100%. He has very good insight, and I hope he starts playing Age of Sigmar because he's got a good mind for the game in general. We used to play back when before I took a break. Anyway, that command ability for the Coven Throne. Look, I love this mechanic. I know there's some people that cry about this, and they're very upset about the fact that the turns are random. And there's a good chance that at some point throughout every game, you're going to wind up getting not only back-to-back turns, but your opponent is going to. And I say, get over it. Don't comp that stuff. It's great. It's that you have to prepare and plan in advance for that uncertainty. It's one of the things I love about bolt action. And I think that uncertainty really will make you really, just really feel you'll second guess your moves, and you'll have to prepare further down the line, more long term in the game. And I think it makes the game much more interesting and much more strategic. This ability superseding that is crazy, because how many times with any games that you've played so far have you run into a situation where it's critical that you get that next turn, and if you don't, there's a whole bunch of your plans that not only will fall apart, but your opponent's going to get some tremendous advantage. I just think that is one of the most crazy abilities I've seen in this entire list, in this entire army.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We're going to talk about this a little bit on Warhammer Weekly tomorrow, but a lot of people bitch about this alternating turn situation, or this 2 turns in a row situation. And what I would say is and a lot of people, one of the complaints is that this removes tactics.
Please.
And quite the contrary, this now requires every general to plan 2 steps in advance, both if they on one hand, what if they go next, or if their enemy goes, or like if it's alternating, or if their enemy goes twice in a row.
Right.
And so now they need to be able to have appropriate like alternative actions for both of those. And that takes more strategy and planning, not less.
Right. And mind you, the best players competitively that I've seen, and even just in local friendly games, were the people who did already think 2 or 3 turns down the road anyway. And if you're not doing that, you should start thinking that way. You should start planning that way. Yes, these are friendly games, beer and pretzels. I get it. I'm all about it. But you're still playing to win. You're not trying to grind your opponent into the dust and ruin their fun. And if you are, you're playing the wrong damn game, and you're not going to be playing with me. But the fact is, though, is that you're trying to play to win. And in doing that, if you should be trying to do the best you can to plot and plan your strategy. And if this kind of thing can throw off somebody's game, then that's just a outrageous ability. I love the randomness and the uncertainty of that. This takes that out off the board, and I just think that that's nuts. I would be targeting this Coven Throne turn 1. And everybody, I'd be throwing everything at it. If this is just this army in general is just a absolute richness of things to be worried about, as much as I've seen in any other of these books. And it's crazy. I know that I have a little bit of a biased opinion because this is my army, but still, it's just one thing after another that's just, oh my God.
Well, that Lamnian vampire would welcome you to target it with its biggest things. It has a beguile spell for you.
Yeah, well, it's a 12-inch range, but you know what? If you're sitting this Coven Throne in the back, you're playing it wrong. It needs to get up there. So, all right, let's go Vargeists. Okay, I'm going to take the Vargeists. I've always loved Vargeists. I love that they're balls out, all attack, all offense. And and then no less in this edition. As a matter of fact, they're even a little bit beefier now, because it used to be that they were only like a 3-wound type thing, and they didn't really have much of any kind of save. Now they've got a 5-up save, which you can play with. You can Mystic Shield them. You could put them into terrain. But now look at the amount of attacks that they have. They got 4 wounds a pop. They've got 3 attacks. That -1 rend is going to add up. 2 damage is nothing to laugh at. And here's the other thing: if each time they roll, it says here, roll a dice each time a model from this unit slays an enemy model. On a 6, it can immediately make 1 extra attack. Now, honestly, depending on the unit that it goes up against, it may or may not come into play. But if you could get a unit of Vargeist, even 3 of them, in on a single wound, massive models, unless they're immune to battle shock, you could almost be certain that they're going to be taking some battle shock testing, and they're going to lose a lot more models, because these guys are going to put the hurt on, and those 6s are going to come into play. I really like Vargeist. I always have. Crazy mobility and a lot of offensive punch.
Yeah, so I've spent a lot of time in all the scrolls at this point. Part of the writing the Mordheim stuff, the adaptation for Age of Sigmar.
Cannot wait to see it. Cannot wait.
I've literally studied all, like, as the numbers guy, I've studied all the scrolls and everything. So I was disappointed when I came upon the Vargeist, because this mechanic you often see, but in a much more accessible way. And what that is if you make an attack and you roll a 6, you gain an extra attack. Okay? Or if you wound and roll a 6, you gain an extra attack. And like you see that mechanic deployed throughout a number of the different armies. And this one is a much more restricted version of that. They have to slay an enemy model to even have a chance to roll that 6. And so
sure.
I wish they had been beefed up just a little bit more, so that whenever they throw that 6 on like a wound roll, they would get that extra attack. But
I'm fine with that. I agree with you. It's a little bit of a weakened version of what we see in other type frenzy things. But
yeah,
honestly, you get a unit of just 3 of these guys, 3 attacks a pop. They're -1 rend each, and look at the to hit and wound. Usually to hit and wounds are some flip of 4-3, 3-4, 4-4. This is 3-3, and they're each 2 damage. That's a lot of damage every attack, with just 9 attacks just on these guys alone, without any of the other enhancements you see in this army list. This is the basis of something that can really blend through a unit.
And it's not hard to get reroll 1s. And if you get reroll 1s with a unit like this, it's 3-up, 3-up. it's going to be a bloodbath. I know this from firsthand experience.
Let's also talk about the casting value. It's only a 6. You get 3 Vargeists. And this is something that I like in the summoning here. And regardless of what you think about summoning, and mind you, I'm going to do an entire video just on how to counter summoning, just like I'm going to do one on how to counter shooting, because that stuff is starting to come into play. That's why we're doing these unlocking videos. Here's the accelerant. If you roll high enough, you don't just get 3, you get 6 if you roll an 11 or a 12. And it's unbelievable. I had that happen once in a game. It wasn't with the Vargeists. It was with Hex Wraiths. And still.
And if you plan your list, by the way, your drops, as I alluded to at the beginning of this video, it's not hard to pull +4 on all summoning casts. Like, so that 11 suddenly becomes a 7, which is much, much, much more attainable.
Yeah, and some people have asked about this. Does it have to be a natural? I've had the people ask me all kinds of questions on this stuff. The reason why it's not a natural 11 or 12 is because of the words "or more." Yep. If the words "or more" weren't there, it wouldn't be. It implies that there's modifiers that affect that roll. If it just said an 11 or 12, then there would be a natural 11 or 12. No, it's with modifiers, and there is a lot of modifiers within the Vampire Counts army.
Absolutely.
All right, you get Blood Knights.
Absolutely. Deal. I'll take it. Man, Blood Knights are just the premier knight. I love these guys. Clocking in at 3 wounds, 10-inch move, 4-up save. They have great attacks. The knights themselves are at 3 attacks, 3 up, -1 rend, -1 damage. These guys are just BA, or like, oh, they're so good. They're going to heal wounds if they're slaying enemy models. They're vampires, so they're drinking blood. I don't know if we've had this yet, so I'm going to jump back to it. For their standard bearer, you return one slain model during your hero phase. Okay.
Yep.
Like this unit auto heals 3 wounds every hero phase of your own. That is crazy good.
Yeah, you better wipe the whole unit out.
Yeah, because like, I'm pretty sure what this means is that you get to place 1 model within 1 inch of any other unit. So you talk about needing to be in a strategic place with these models. You could very easily, because it doesn't say you have to, like, there's no rules for placing models when they get a slain model gets returned, other than it has to be within 1 inch of the rest of your unit. So these models coming back, you could actually shift battle lines, and there's a lot of things that you could do that I don't think that people are thinking about with this standard bearer. Then, in addition to that, their musician gets the same thing that like a lot of the Tomb King's musicians does, is that they auto charge 6 inches. They, by default, they always move at least 6 inches on a charge, unless it's higher on the charge roll, which is
how important that is.
They will always make their charges. Like, if you're within a reasonable distance, they're always going to make their charges. Yeah. Because it's not hard to end up within 6 inches of a model with a 10-inch move base. Yeah. And then, like, in addition to that, obviously they're doing the increased damage on the lances on the charge. And my favorite ability on these guys is actually the fact that against, like, 0 rend enemies, they're at a 3-up save. 3 wound model, 3-up save. Like, you crash these guys into, like, a bunch of infantry, like a goblin infantry line. Man, it is going to be ugly.
Yeah, I think that there's a couple people that I've had a conversation with about that, just to explain how the blood shields work. You see this there's a lot of units that have this across many armies. What it means is that if there's no rend on that unit, you get a +1 basically to your save. If it's negated if there's any kind of rend, which is kind of like a double duty, because not only do you get the rend, but you don't get this 1 extra ability. So you could actually swing from that 3-up save to even a 5-up or 6-up, depending on what the rend is. It's nice when it works. It works really well for you. When it doesn't, you kind of get in the double loss. I also want to point out that healing, the wording is, you got to be very clear on the wording sometimes with the hunger. It says models from this unit heal 1 wound at the end of the combat phase, if the unit slew any models during that phase. Now, again, I have a whole slew of these questions that people have asked me. There's been a bunch of people saying I cannot wait for Vampire Counts, just like people are asking me to do lizard men and demons of chaos just asking all the time. It's not every model in the unit, because you don't apply wounds to all the models in a unit. You only apply it to one model at a time until it's slain, and then it keeps carrying over. So you're only recovering the hunger 1 wound per turn, basically, if you've slain something. So you're not getting, if you have 5 blood knights, they don't each have 1 wound. So you only get 1 wound. Just don't overdo it, guys. I got to tell you, when you look at blood knights on paper, some people have had the reaction that you have, which is that they're, oh my god, they're crazy. When I look at their abilities, they're just raw numbers, and there's not a whole lot of finesse to them. It's just throw these models in there. They have extra wounds, they do crazy damage, and lots of attacks, and they have everything is really good. But there's the flavor of them, other than the fact that they're basically vampire knights, mounted. There's nothing else that just will wow you other than just the raw numbers. This is a stat unit. That's really it.
Yeah, and yes, and it's true. But let me just say, this is the perfect type of unit that I would want to ram right up the middle, the midline.
Yes.
Because they have the staying power. I ran it again. I was playing High Elves this last week. I was running Eltharion, and he has a similar ability of the adding 1 save with a model no rend. I took a unit of 20 Saurus in the back. Because I moved in, helped him. He helped another unit clear up, and I took it. I knew that a big unit of Saurus were coming in. He cast Mystic Shield himself and was at a 2-up save because they had 0 rend. And he tanked he was 2 wounds in. And this was the Saurus formation, so each of these Sauruses were throwing around 4 attacks each or something ridiculous. And he took 2 wounds at the end of 1 round of combat.
Yeah,
which is just ridiculous. And so this blood shield, this rule can do some major work
because there's a lot of units that don't have rend.
Yeah.
My conversion on this is basically I'm taking the old school metal chaos knights. I've been waiting. And then I put the Bretonnian helmets on them, and they're mounted on, and again, it's all about the paint job too. The problem is I got to get more of them because I only have 5. Because when was I ever in previous editions going to feel more than 5 of these guys? Well, now I want 5, and I want to be able to summon 5 more.
Well, that's going to be a problem because these guys don't let you summon.
Oh, I just noticed that. Yes, they cannot be summoned. Well, guess what? I still want another 5.
Vampires can't normally be summoned, by the way, and you'll see that in the list. Technically, Vargheists are vampires, they have the vampire keyword, but most pure, true, intelligent vampires aren't summonable.
Well, in that case, you need to know that you're going to have as many of these guys on the board as possible, obviously within a certain reason, but 5 minimum is great. I love that. They have the ability to restore and stick in there and enough wounds to survive. Yeah, I'll take 10. All right. And the core of your march right up the field. I agree. All right, Fellbats. I think Fellbats are just like the bat swarms beneath them. You can take the bat swarms. We'll both be talking about them. I think that Fellbat stock went up tremendously in Age of Sigmar. Before, I just used them as chaff. There's a lot of chaff units now that are capable, and these Fellbats feel almost like Vargheists of 8th edition to me. They may not have the frenzy ability, but they've got more attacks than they used to. They have more wounds than they used to. I like that you could summon more of them on a 5. Obviously I wouldn't take them in just units of 3. They're look, this ability here, if models if an enemy model is slain within 6 inches, doesn't have to be you. It just has to be within 6 inches. You put them in, behind the front lines, and then you march them, go after characters, you go after war machines, just like, you might have done before. But now they're much more killy than they were before, in comparison to, what their role was before. And here, this thing, if any model is slain within 6 inches, now they make 6 attacks instead of 3. I would put them up in a situation where they're near where there's going to be a big combat, and hope that happens just before they get activated, and then you're going to have a whole slew of attacks.
Yeah, I could see you running 2 sets of 3 of these guys, flanking on each side of that Blood Knight, that huge Blood Knight block that you're sending right up the middle.
Yep.
And then obviously those Blood Knights are going to come crashing in, do a you know, and these Fellbats, by the way, are 14-inch moves, so they can keep up with those Blood Knights. The Blood Knights are going to come crashing in. They're going to kill one mob on the charge. That's going to happen. And then you have 2 small side flanking units that are throwing out 18 attacks each.
Yeah.
Like,
exactly.
let me restate that. You are going to have 36 flanking attacks from these 2 units the next round of combat.
And what are you going to pay attention to, the Fellbats or the Blood Knights? Well, you should be paying attention to the Fellbats, to be honest with you.
Right. You know, so like these are great flanking troops. They have the mobility. They're not threatening. You know, people see Fellbats and are like, man, I'm going to focus on the things that are going to put some major hurt. And that's going to be a mistake. I mean, these things are going to be these are going to be a threat once they are beefed up. And so you're going to want to put them into situations where they double their attacks, and suddenly they're going to get really scary.
Yeah, my problem is that I went ballistic on converting these. So these are my Fel Pegasi.
Yeah,
and they look dangerous. So it might change. What you see on the battlefield tends to change how you affect what your strategy is with the average player. I have to admit, and these guys do attract a lot of attention with the ones that I've made. Check my videos if you want to see that in the Convert This videos. I like them. Look, they're not going to stick. They're not going to take a lot of damage. They only got a 6-up save. You're not going to throw a Mystic Shield on these guys. Maybe if you're lucky, they'll be in a terrain feature that they can get an extra +1. They're going to go down, and there's no mechanic for them to heal back. But they are that enhancement unit that to sit next to another killer unit, like you said, with the Blood Knights or various other units that people are just going to ignore and be surprised. Yeah. Bat Swarms. Okay.
Yeah, so Bat Swarms. This is a utility unit. This is not a damaging unit. This is going to be something that is going to is kind of mucking up the battlefield. And the main ability they're going to be thrown around is the Cloud of Horror, which means that units from your opponent's army that are within 12 inches of these guys during the shooting phase subtract 1 from their hit rolls.
This is not a common ability.
No, it's really not.
Yeah.
Now, you know, it's like having a mobile Nurgle debuff for shooting units. Now, I want to point out something. There's been some confusion about the rules on this. And so let me pick apart some of the grammar here. That it says that, I'll read it word for word. Units from your opponent's army must subtract 1 from their hit rolls if they are within 12 inches of any Bat Swarms in the shooting phase. Okay. This is not... It does not say 12 inches of a Bat Swarm or each Bat Swarm. It's any Bat Swarm. And because of that any, this is not a cumulative effect.
I agree.
This is a yes or no. You look, are you within 12 inches of any Bat Swarms? Yes or no. If yes, subtract 1. If no, roll normal.
But still, it's worth noting that this is one of those, and there's not, again, like there's not a lot of them. This is one of those abilities that you can use to try and mitigate some of the outrageous shooting ability of some units. It's a lot of people have said shooting is overpowered, and yeah, it's powerful and it deserves to be powerful, but there are things like this on the battlefield that can help reduce it. And Bat Swarms are a nice way of shielding your army so that you can get in on those shooting units and erase them and also get within 3 inches where some of their special abilities are no longer usable.
Absolutely. And these guys, let me just point out briefly before we move on, have a 3-inch range.
Yeah.
That's not a small, they can safely sit in the back behind the lines and engage at basically the maximum range of the maximum pile-in range. So that's, I mean, you could literally have, if you're running 20 mil bases, you could literally have 3 skeletons between you and them and still be attacking their front line.
Yeah, you could put them in you can use that, the ability, you can just take a cluster inside of your mass of zombies or skeletons and just have some Bat Swarms hanging out in the middle of there. Yeah, why not?
Yep.
And I mean, I love them. I love the 5 attacks, even though it's 5 up, 5 up. I like the 5 wounds. And why don't you tell us about the Bloodsucker's ability?
Yeah, so if they cause any wounds in the combat phase, it heals all of their wounds at the end of the phase. So basically, these guys are going to stick around unless you are killing them off completely
Yeah, you have to
killing
kill
off the models.
you have to remove a model for that not to come into play. You have the model
Yep.
has to be gone for you not to be able to get it. Also 12-inch and fly. Let's if they do get into combat, they're going to be able to get away with retreat. Please don't forget retreat, guys. Retreat is a phenomenal ability in the game, or tremendous, or any of the other adjectives that I like to use that people are making fun of me.
Certainly.
Okay, let's see. The Necromancer. Okay, the Necromancer is another character to cast, another character to bind, but he's the enhancer more than I believe anything else. Yes, he can summon if there's units on the battlefield. But let's take a look of that have the summon mechanic. But let's take a look at what he can do. First of all, if you're near a unit and it says another death unit. So as you pointed out, anything from Tomb Kings or Vampire Counts is considered a death unit. It all has the keyword death. You basically can ignore the wound on a 4-up and it gets taken by that unit. That's nice. They have to take a mortal wound instead, but I'd rather lose a couple of zombies than lose my Necromancer. So the Necromancer is going to sit back, maybe in the midst of zombies or skeletons or whatever, or hide somewhere in the back. And his main focus is going to be, yes, to summon, because you almost certainly you're going to have the summon mechanic. But let's also look at the Van Hel's Dance. All right, what it says is that if successfully cast, you pick a skeleton, mordant, or zombie unit. Now, what is that? That's a skeleton or zombie unit, and usually it's either crypt ghouls or crypt cars or the mordants. All right, they now, and this is within 18 inches. So if you have the Necromancer sitting behind enemy lines, again, hiding or perhaps stuck inside of a large cluster unit, now they can pile in and attack twice. And we will see when we get to zombies and ghouls and skeletons just how freaking crazy that is when you have this as a force multiplier. This is amazing, okay? Because those crap units that you didn't really care about before, they're the core units that you were forced to take, that maybe you're thinking in Age of Sigmar you're not going to take. When we get to those units, you're going to want to take them. And that we'll get to that next. But first, if you have any thoughts on the Necromancer, but then we can get to that point.
No, he's fantastic. I love him. I like people look at him, and I don't think that they're not seeing the forest. They're only seeing this one seemingly unremarkable tree, not realizing the significance of him as a summoner and as him as kind of perpetuating this cycle of death. Yeah. No pun intended.
The theme of having maybe 3 of these necromancers or 2 necromancers with a horde of zombies, skeletons, ghouls, yes to all of them, or just a whole bunch of one type, you will see once we get to the next one. And why don't you take it away and let's talk about zombies.
Man, like people look at zombies and they're like, 1 wound, 6 up, 6 up. These guys are terrible.
No save.
No save, 4-inch move. These guys are ridiculous or dumb. There are not many common troops I am more afraid of than zombies. Because, like as 2D6 pointed out, beyond all the tactics of the zombie square, which is terrifying. If you don't know what that is, it's a square of zombies with a necromancer in the middle, with a tail that like a rat tail that's following this block around. That's allowing, because so here's one of the rules, and here's one of the big magic rules of the zombies, is that they can merge units. Mm-hmm. Okay, so if they can, if there are 2 more units within 1 inch, they can merge and become a single unit for the rest of the battle. And people are like, okay, what's the big deal with this? Well, this is a big deal because you can raise zombies and add them to the back of your zombie horde. Okay, and instantaneously. And so here's the big deal about that. If you're at the base number of 10 models, they're getting +1 to hit and +1 to wound. So they go to 5 up, 5 up. If they have 20 or more models, they're at 4 up, 4 up. If they have 30 or more models, they're at 3 up, 3 up. And then if there's a corpse card around here, guess what? They're at 2 up, 3 up. That should scare you, okay? Because we're also talking about 40, 30 plus models at this point that are at 2 up, 3 up. That you're only going to continue to get more and more and more and more that are returning a D6 slain models from the standard bearer, and that are also auto charging 6 inches, even though their base movement is 4. They surprisingly don't have a zombie captain in the unit, despite the fact that they do have the standard bearer and the musician.
Well, they didn't have it in 8th edition also
It's true.
because there was no champion zombie. I mean, I can't imagine a zombie being smarter than the average zombie. Let me just say that this is so fluffy to me because it really is. It's about the zombie horde. The whole idea behind zombies, you're not scared of the one, but the horde is terrifying. Yes, I love it. I've run this like 3 times already in different incarnations, and it is just as good as it looks. And the idea that you can summon a minimum of 10 of them, okay, and if you get the boost 20,
this just makes me sad. Because I run Tomb Kings, and there's not like I don't have a good proxy for zombies at this point, unless I literally wanted to make like a mummy, like a generic mummy horde.
You can use regular zombies. It's still
I know, but it just doesn't feel right.
Get the romantic ones. They're looking a little different.
Yeah, I've thought about it. It just doesn't feel right. So I need to find some proxy for my Tomb King zombies. So if you have a suggestion, put it in the comments because I need some suggestions for Tomb King zombies because I want to feel these bad boys.
Now, I have 2 sets of zombies in the mass that I have. I have probably about 100 of them that are unpainted. I have 50 of them that are converted men-at-arms zombies.
Nice.
With arrows sticking out of them and swords and axes in their skulls and freshly dead, which is just more work than is necessary. And then I have the standard ones, which are the ones that I use for being raised. I just don't think you can have too many zombies with this roll. You could have several blocks and just keep summoning them. Now, I want to say something about summoning also, and I'm just a little bit of a tangent here. Summoning is not. It may seem tremendously powerful and overpowered and broken to a lot of people. People have been complaining about summoning as much as shooting. All right, let me say this. Remember your victory conditions. Other than scenarios that erase victory conditions, the percentages matter. I know there was a thought early on that maybe if you summon a unit, it was automatically considered a wound towards victory. It isn't. But what it does say is that if those guys die, if you remove models from your summoned, they get applied towards victory conditions, which are percentages. If you start out with 50 models and your opponent has whatever it is, and you suddenly add another 50 models into the mix, unless you table your opponent, you're risking that percentage is going to weigh so much heavily against you because of the percentage that you started with is static versus the amount of wounds you can take. Okay, that is a real big factor with summoning that few people are talking about. If you go hog wild and summon lots and lots of zombies and you summon lots and lots of everything, if your opponent has one guy on the battlefield, the likelihood is, unless there's other victory conditions or it's a scenario-based condition, you're going to lose automatically because the numbers are going to be against you. What's your thought on that?
No, yes. I think that I'm sorry, I'm distracted by my son who apparently has woken up in the middle of the night and invaded my basement. I think that so the question is how does summoning influence or interact with victory conditions?
Yes.
I think percentages. I am of the mindset, and a lot of people don't like this, that newly summoned models obviously count against your, like when they're killed, count against your totals. And at the end, and in my opinion, the game ends if somebody has been wiped off, had 100% of their models killed, which is a big detriment to any summoning and any, I think that is, honestly, I think that is supposed to be the balance.
Yeah, I don't read it as hardcore as that. I could see the merit in it. It's one of those things, again, that's kind of vague. But when I've read it again, I don't look at it as they're auto wounds that count against you.
No, I agree. I'm not counting it as auto wounds. But what I'm saying is this: if I'm mowing through a huge block of zombies and they keep resummoning, once I get to your original total model count, I've won the game.
Well, not necessarily. If you have any models surviving on your opponent, you can't win. You can't win based on percentage. but the game doesn't end as soon as you summoned 100% more models than you started with. It doesn't say that, but it does say that when it comes to victory conditions, that major victory is if you wipe your opponent off the table, basically table them. There's nothing left.
Right.
But if there's even one single model, you go to the minor victory, which is you start doing math. And if the math is that I now suddenly have 200% casualties, and you got that one guy on board, you're not going to exceed 200% casualties because I had more guys that I finished with that you killed, that higher percentage versus what I started than you. I could kill 99% of your army. You have one guy remaining. If you killed 200% because I have summoned so much more stuff and then you killed a lot of them, I lose. I lose automatically.
I think this is a larger discussion.
Yeah, we'll talk about it.
But what I would say, but what I would say is that I think that I think that this is one of the balancing things has been written in the system. I think the wording in the rules is just bad.
Yes, that's what I agree with you 100%. But you got to keep that in mind. Everybody who talks about summoning it's the same thing I probably have as a problem with a lot of people who are detractors and criticism about Age of Sigmar. They haven't read all the rules. They haven't read it enough. They haven't read it through and really deciphered it, and they haven't even tested it on the table enough. And maybe that's not for everybody, but a lot of those components probably are not there enough. We are not going to know a lot of these things till we play it and test it, but we have to remember these rules because they matter. If you have a summoning army, you're putting yourself in the hole. You better finish off your opponent. Otherwise, you're giving up your victory because you summoned 50 zombies. That could be it. It could be summoning 10 things. 10 models could be the end of it for you if you just go to the numbers at the end of the game. So
and the question is like, how do you decide when the game ends? Does that make sense? Like, if there's not a clear condition and you guys can't play for another 3 hours,
well, then it's evident. The percentages are what you go to, and you lose because you've summoned twice your army or so. Yes, I agree. That's what you have to consider if you want to play the summoning game. Don't forget that, and don't let your opponents forget it either. All right, so yes, we'll talk about this more in depth because that warrants a whole discussion, but it is important for us to have brought up because Vampire Counts is a major summoning army.
Clearly. Go ahead on the next one. I'll catch up with you in just a minute. I need to go.
You got it.
I'll be back.
No problem. All right, so Dire Wolves. Now, anybody who's played with or against Vampire Counts in previous editions knows that Dire Wolves were another one of those chaff units. And chaff units were just to be, throw up in your enemy's face, try to redirect in 8th edition, try to, force your opponent to charge that unit, and then they would maneuver in a way that they would neuter their movement, their charging ability, and then they would move in the direction that you want them to. These were units that would also, they were very quick. They would swoop around the edges, the flanks, try to go after war machines. So they really were just fodder, and they were meant to go target those, those shooty war machines that you really were scared of. But now, just like almost every other chaff unit, they've got a little bit more pump and a little bit more power. So what do they have now? They have 2 wounds, not bad, and they got a 5-up save. They didn't have any save before, if I remember correctly. They add 1 to their wound rolls on a charge. That's great. That's phenomenal. They start out with a 4-up and a 4-up, which means that goes to a 3-up 4-up. Not bad at all. 2 attacks each, no rend and 1 damage. Okay, these are still going to be fast movers at 10 inches each, and you're going to have a minimum of 5. I'd probably take them in groups of 10, just so that I can weather whatever damage is going to be taken against them. And then let's look at also, you can add 1 to all save rolls for this unit if it's within 9 inches of a corpse cart. Now, a corpse cart's not a fast moving unit, but the fact is you're probably going to be taking 1. You may take 2 in your army because of all the benefits you get, which we're going to talk to next. But now you have that 5-up save, which Dire Wolves never really had a save before. Now that's a 4-up save. And if it's a small unit in terrain, it could be a 3-up save. So yeah, 2 wounds, 2 attacks, 3-up, 4-up. There's a lot of great things here. And guess what? Now you can summon a couple of them. And if you summon them in an area that's far enough away from your opponent, you still got a 10-inch move. They have a 9-inch. They have to be 9 inches away when you summon them, but they're going to get right up into that 3-inch danger zone without a problem. And I just think that they're worthwhile to take for the role that they take, and now they are more survivable than they were before. Not a problem for me. And I love them. I love the model.
They're fantastic. Like I mean, I can see myself feeling some of these guys.
Yeah, one unit at least, maybe two on the flanks. All right, and then of course, like we said, that these guys get enhanced by the corpse cart. You got the corpse cart. Doesn't look so great on its own war scroll, but when you look at, yeah, go ahead.
I love me a corpse cart. It's part of that magical combination that I was telling you guys about. In that, so it has two passive abilities, and I'm a big fan of the passive ability. You know, it's not really a melee. It's not really a melee chariot. The reality is at 6 wounds, 6 up save. Its attacks aren't really anything to write home about. It has a couple like zombies that it's going to throw some attacks and stuff like that. But where it's worth its weight in gold is the fact that it debuffs the enemy by penalizing their casting rolls within 18 inches. So you want this closer to the front line, and it's going to benefit all of your death wizards by +1 for the casting rolls within 18 inches. Now you're only going to be able to get the benefit of one of these guys because it says any corpse cards rather than each corpse card or anything like that.
Similar to what it was in 8th edition too.
Yep. So but you're going to want to have at least one of these floating around your army somewhere, probably near the front, like the second tier, not front line, obviously, but supporting the front line.
Right. And you know what? You only get a 4-inch move, but you should be running these guys every time. And if you get Van Hale's dance off, you'll be doing a little more than that.
Yep. No reason not to.
Now, again, this doesn't look really all that crazy. You know, you've got just average or subpar to hit wounds and numbers of attacks. Nothing crazy. That zombie horde 2-6 is nice, but marry this up with some of the native abilities that are on the war scroll for zombies or for crypt horrors or crypt ghouls. You'll see what we mean. We already talked about the zombies. When we get to the other units, you want a corpse cart. You want 2. Okay, you're getting all the good ones, man. You get the Mortis engine. Go for it.
Okay, no, absolutely. Again, like this is one of my favorite models. We talked about on Warhammer Weekly last week. We did favorite models, and this was my favorite chariot.
Mine too. I was screaming it to the screen.
Oh man, it's so fantastic. I'll just start like the Wail of the Damned, like that Banshee scream that you see on the Banshees, that you see on that you see on like the Vargeist. Obviously they're modified variously. I think the Vargeist is actually the difference between the rolls. Or is the Vargeist the same? Yeah, the Vargeist is a different. I'm sorry. Yes. Not the Vargeist. The Terrorgeist.
The Terrorgeist, yes.
Yeah, like Terrorgeist is the difference. So this is only going to be the difference of a D3. Like if there's a difference, if you won this roll, it's a D3 wounds. But it's still pretty fantastic. And where I lost my train of thought.
The Wail of the Damned.
The Wail of the Damned. Yeah, so basically how it functions is that roll 2 dice for each enemy unit within the range shown in the damage table. If the total is higher than that unit's bravery, that you're going to spread out a D3 wounds. And so this is hitting everything within basically 9 inches of the Mortis engine. Which again, it's you're just splashing damage out. It's not a fantastic ability, but it's not terrible.
No, they're mortal wounds too.
Yes, they're mortal wounds, exactly. Likewise, the reliquary is once per battle. You're going to throw that out, and each unit within that many inches, you're going to roll 4d6. And then whatever that total is, each unit within that range, if it's a death unit, it heals D3 wounds. If it's a non-death unit, it suffers a D3 mortal wounds.
I love that ability. I've used it only once, but it was devastating because you're hurting them and you're healing yourself. It's just fantastic.
Yep. And then finally, the Mortis engine is that another one of those keys in my formula, my stacking formula of with the Blasphemous Tome. Death wizards within 12 inches of Mortis engines gain +1 to all casting rolls. And you and your opponent must subtract 1 from the casting rolls of all other wizards that are within 12 inches of any Mortis engines with a Blasphemous Tome. What that means is that if you're running a Mortis engine, only run Deathcasters. If you run other wizards, you're going to get penalized for being near the Mortis engine.
Yeah, you better keep those way away from the Mortis engine.
Yep. But I don't see any reason why you'd roll anything else if you're running Death, because between this and the Corpse Cart and the Casket of Souls, you can be sporting a whole bunch of +1s in auto casting spells.
Yeah, I agree. I love it. I love the model. I love the abilities. I will say this, the fact that it diminishes in its range as well as other effects as it gets wounded is something you cannot ignore. This thing,
Yep.
if you should be shooting at it and at least try to neuter it down to about half wounds if you can't erase it entirely. This thing will punish you because while it's sitting right behind the front lines, it's going to be another one of those second tier abilities that is just going to it's going to stack. You know, it's going to heal and hurt, and I just absolutely loved it. I love the Mortis Engine more than the Coven Throne in 8th edition. I'm not really sure which one I like more. They're just so interesting now, and
I still like the model of the Mortis Engine better than the Coven Throne, but you know.
All right, I'll agree with you on that. Yeah. All right, White King. White King's role is a little different than it was previously. It doesn't have as much versatility. I'm a little disappointed that it's got just the standard 5 wounds. It used to be one of those things that in 8th edition was just, again, you know, there's no points. So it's not really about a points argument. But in 8th edition, the White King was just such a great value for what you spent. Had extra wounds. It had the killing blow, which is gone. It obviously, you know, a lot of people didn't like taking it with the battle standard bearer, but once end times hit, you had the Morghasts with their ability to mitigate some some of the crumbling. White King with a standard bearer did that as well, so it kind of stacked, and it was a nice little mechanic. Didn't really have as much of an impact. It was a really huge leap to go and take it. Now you really take the White King for, in my opinion, the standards ability. So I'll read it. A White King with an Infernal Standard has the totem keyword. You roll each time a death model from your unit is slain within 9 inches of the Infernal Standard on a 6. The magic of the Infernal Standard sustains the warrior, and the attack that slew him is ignored. Okay, in the hero phase, the White King can plant the standard. It basically increases that to 18 inches. This is enormous because when you look at a Vampire Count's army, you're going to be talking in most cases about a high model count army. And when you're looking at things like ghouls and skeletons and zombies, you're going to be taking lots of wounds. You may even be taking lots of battle shock tests just because of the volume of wounds you take. And the idea that now you can reduce some of those slain models on a roll of a 6 just is it increases the reach of what those large units because the sustainability, the ability to survive, because you're not going to remove as many of those models. It's a big deal. He's got an ancient shield, so he's got a 3-up save. Not, you know, okay, but his instead of a killing blow, which is an outright, you know, a death if it worked, now it does a few extra points of damage. And you know what? That's nice. It's great. I'm not going to say it's all you know, something I'm not happy about, but it's not the insta kill that it used to be. It used to be a very scary thing when you modified it. I would say that it's all about that standard.
Well, yes, I agree completely. And let me just say that 2 things. One, the point that I want to make, which is if you're going to run like a White King battle standard bearer, which is basically what this is, you have a fantastic model from Forge World. Like I don't know if you've seen that model, but it is awesome. That said,
the infantry version, you mean?
Yeah,
he's awesome.
That said, breaking news. The Forge World model has been rolled into the Warhammer website just this evening.
Really?
I heard it was going to happen. I went to look at the Forge World model, and it actually has like has Warhammer Age of Sigmar at the top now, and the format of it is the Games Workshop like format, nice. With the armies on the side and everything. So yeah. There you go. Breaking news, people. You heard it here first.
Oh, you didn't even save that little gem for Warhammer Weekly.
Nope.
Nice. Yeah, I converted one of the standard White King models to be a standard bearer as well, which I'm sure I'm not the only person that's done it. I have 2 of them. One is a regular one with a weapon and shield, and one is and I actually have a mounted one also. So I actually have 3, but one of them's, you know, is on a steed.
Nice.
So that's good too. But you know, it used to be that this was the only character you could put into a Black Knight unit and still be able to get the ability to ignore terrain, the ethereal movement, and that is no longer the case. He's on a skeletal steed, but he doesn't get that ignore, and you'll see that when we get to Black Knights.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't get that ignore terrain features or whatever, where you essentially you have a fly ability in this game. So you lose a little bit with the White King in that regard. But you know what? That Infernal Standard still. Still.
Absolutely.
Now, I didn't read well enough to see if that's something that can stack.
On the Infernal Standard?
Yeah, I don't think it can stack.
I don't think so.
Yeah, it just says an Infernal Standard. So I'm thinking it does not in stack. It does not stack. So you can't get 2 rolls of 6. You can't.
No, it just says roll a dice each time a death model from your army is slain within 9 inches of an Infernal Standard.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that does not stack. Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, good. We want to distinguish.
Yep. And let me just briefly say before we move to skeletons, this dude has a 3-up armor save if you want him to. Now technically you can't have the standard if you do that. But like again, there's not a lot of dudes running around with 3-up armor because it says they some bear an ancient shield to batter aside the enemy's blows, but some instead bear an infernal standard.
Right. You're right. Those are really there are a few units that say you can have all of it. There's very few of those. Most of them is a choice. You're right. I would rather not. I'm not going to have an ancient shield instead of that standard. Come on.
No, but again, you can be 3-up if you want to, which is not too shabby. So
okay, all right.
No,
sure.
But yeah,
sure. I guess if you already have an infernal standard, yeah, you might want to use the guy with the shield.
What I'm saying is that this guy, like, this is going to be a really silly kind of statement, but this guy might be a decent like 3-up like backline chafe. And what I mean by that is throw him into a unit to hold something that's coming in at your line. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I would have to be a really big game for me to have something like that on the table.
Yeah.
But that's
better choices. Yes.
Yeah. Yep. So move on to skeletons. This is literally an identical copy paste from the Skeleton Warriors of Tomb Kings.
I love that.
Literally every line is a copy paste of the Tomb King skeleton, to the point where there are both crypt shields and tomb shields, because you can choose which kind of shield you want, which, realistically, like, what kind of undead are you running? So these are the same guys, and they're fantastic. They gain extra attacks the more models you get, and I love it. I love throw them with a death hero nearby, increase their to hit roll, and then throwing around a bunch of extra attacks, and these guys can quickly become pretty scary. Yeah,
throw in now. The mechanic for you have more than 30. You now have 2 extra attacks, so they got 3 attacks. Throw a Vampire Lord. I think it was the Vampire Lord that can give you the that had the mechanic that gave you an extra attack.
Yep.
Now you have 4 attacks each.
Yep.
You could have 2 units of these, and one row can be your ancient blade, and the one behind it can be a row of spears. And yeah.
Well, no, you do 2 these guys are on 20 mils. Like if you're running old squares, so you do 2 rows of ancient blades, because 1 inch reach on a 20 mil, your second rank can hit with 1 inch.
That's true. If they're right up against each other,
yep.
Absolutely.
Yep. And then ancient spear, you would want to do them the 3rd rank back. Yeah.
Yeah. I like the I don't know which one I like more, actually. The Tomb Shield or the Crypt Shield. The Crypt Shield is going to be better against, look, you only have a 6-up save. This will give you a +1 if you don't have any rend that you're going up against. But the ability, it says your unit carrying Tomb Shields can create a shield fortress instead of running or charging in this turn. If it does so, add 1 to the save rolls for the unit until its next movement phase. I kind of like that a little bit more. Only because I think once you get in there, you're gonna restore die 6 slain skeleton warriors every turn, just as an auto mechanic. You don't have to worry about invocation anymore. There's so many things you could do with this unit.
when you get into the grind, the Tomb Shield's going to be universally better.
Yes,
because you're not running and charging during those turns, so you're always getting the add 1 to saves, even if the rend is higher than -1.
Yeah, and then of course you have the if you roll 10 or higher.
Yep.
You got 10 instead of 10 skeletons. You get 20.
20. Yeah, it's just ridiculous. It's redonk. The amount of skeletons you're going to be dropping on the table, and each with 3 to 4 attacks.
Yeah, I have like 40 or 50 that I still have to. I mean, they're missing arms and heads and stuff. I got to build
That's
them.
okay. No, that's legit. Like you have one-armed skeletons. That is a legitimate model.
I at least need a weapon and a shield. I don't have to have a head, but
Details.
details. Well, yeah. I love it. This is another example again of fodder units that you didn't think that you moaned about taking before. Unless some of the creative lists. I saw some creative lists with both zombies and skeleton warriors that were awesome, and combinations even through the end times that were just great with the skeleton warriors and the undead legions. Getting basically weapon 5 or weapon skill 5 or weapon skill 6 skeleton warriors were awesome. In end times when you merged with Tomb Kings. But still, these mechanics different than zombies, a completely different feel. But it's just it's a blender unit, man. It really, you never really would have thought of skeleton warriors being that. You just need a lot of them.
Yep.
All right. Graveguard. I think Graveguard stock went down just a little bit. I'm not sure how you feel about it. I like that they have 2 attacks. I will say this. I think that their use is flipped in terms of what weapon you should use versus what they were in 8th edition.
Agreed.
By meaning that, I mean that everybody in 8th edition, everybody said it was just much better to take the great weapon version because, and yes, it's effective here. You still get the 2 attacks. You get a better wound. But the sticking power of having the shield is, I think, better. Having the ability to go 4 up instead of 5 up, and then be able to improve upon that with Mystic Shield or Terrain is makes these units much better. And for an elite unit before, I think their stock went down a little bit. I really would have liked to see them have 2 wounds. But look, that's asking a lot. I mean, come on, that is asking a lot. They still do have 2 attacks, and they're still working on a 3 up, 4 up, or a 3 up, 3 up. And you cannot discount not only the -1 on the rend, but also, they do have they don't have the same ability that they had before with the killing blow, which was amazing. Now they just do more damage if they roll, what is it, a roll of 6 or more? Is that it, or to wound?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. If you roll 6 or more. So they're a little neutered. There's definitely a use for them. And here's how I would use them. The way I would use them is they're more heavily armored than skeleton warriors. They do have some scary abilities that can add up, in terms of number of attacks. You could do a row or even a block of Graveguard, and inside them you could have spearmen skeleton warriors, and at the very center of that put in a necromancer or another high value hero, and the Graveguard will absorb more damage just because they have a better save, and they dish out more damage because of the attacks. So I take Andy 2d6 your zombie square, and I one up you with the Graveguard. I don't know, hex, rectangle. We'll find something.
Nice. I will say this. I am going to have to go in a couple minutes. So
no problem. We'll pick it up again with characters at some point, or with the synergies with Tomb Kings.
Absolutely.
So you get the next one, Black Knights, and if you got to go after that or after the next one, I'll let you keep going until you got to go.
Fair enough. The Black Knights, they're sporting the standard bearer and hornblower, just the very solid units, solid bonuses that we've kind of talked about. One of their special abilities is Spectral Steeds, which lets them cross scenery, but not enemy models as if they could fly. And I think that this is just going to be a fantastic mobility tool to get into place for a flank charge. If I'm sending the Blood Knights up the middle, I'm sending a Black Knights along one flank. I think the Blood Knights were a 10-inch move, if I remember correctly. Yes. They were, yeah. So, which even reinforces what I'm saying. I'm going to send these guys with their 12-inch move along one of the flanks, run them through some terrain, and come hitting hard into the side of whoever needs support on the charge. They're going to add extra. They get extra to hit and wound, or get extra bonuses to wound and damage on the lance charge, which means they're gonna wound on 3 up and do 2 damage on their charges. They have the shields that make them 4 up save with no rend, and they are summonable.
Standard bearer.
Yeah, and then obviously the standard bearer is restoring 1d3 slain models, and each of those models are 2 wounds.
Yes.
So it's just fantastic.
I just want to mention before I forget that Merrick Wolf
Yep.
His suggestion for your zombies are scarab beetles. That's a lot of beetles.
I'm actually going to be using. So I'm using the scarab. So the scarabs that are flying. If you're familiar with the Tomb King base for the kitty cat. So if you're running them on the ground, there's like a rock that has scarabs flying out of it. I'm going to be using those flying scarabs for my bat swarms.
Nice.
And so, which, like Cloud of Doom and all that stuff. So like it fits there. So it's a good idea. It dawned on me after I mentioned that earlier. I might be able to do the crocodile games. They have like some Egyptian, like Egyptian, like living humans, and I could paint them up as zombies.
Yeah, well, that'd be a lot of work, but yeah, you do it.
Yeah,
you can do it totally. I'm using the Reaper.
Yep.
Bat swarms.
Oh, that's not a bad idea.
Yeah, I need like 4 more of them though.
Nice.
Okay, the Strigoi Ghoul King. I'm going to be talking about it. I'm sure it's going to be after you leave with the formations. But why don't you go ahead and tell us some thoughts?
Yeah, he's a 6 wound hero. You never go wrong with that. 5 attacks, 3 up, -1 rend, 1 damage. So just a decent meleeer. But he really he's a caster and a caster and a commander, which is a big deal. And each wound, he heals D3 wounds at the end of each combat phase in which he slew any models. So he's going to be self-healing. And these guys can last a while, especially if they are part of a larger assault where, the enemy can't leverage all of their models against this. And so that D3 extra wounds, it can be worth its weight in gold.
Yeah.
He's a wizard. He has the Black Hunger spell. It's value 5 only, which is not bad, especially with all the +1s that are going to be thrown around in this army. And you pick a Flesh Eater unit, which is going to be other like ghouls and cryptors and things like that. And they will make 1 extra attack with each of their melee weapons until your next hero phase. This is significant because anytime that you see multiple entries for melee weapons, for example, with the Vargulfs, which have both immense claws and dagger-like fangs, this is increasing the values of both of those attacks.
Yeah, I had 40 of the crypt ghouls with the Ghoul King, and that ability with the other abilities of the ghouls, ripped through some Stormcast Eternals. It was
I'll bet. And then finally his command ability, he until your next hero phase, you can add 1 to hit and wound rolls of Flesh Eater units within 18 inches of him. So he's buffing everybody within 18 inches of him.
Yeah, well, they're Flesh Eaters, so we're talking crypt ghouls, we're talking crypt horrors,
right? Still, that's what you're going to bring along with him. I mean, that's the key. Is that
the synergy? Yeah.
Yeah. So he's going to do some damage, and let me just point out that technically the Strigi Ghoul on the Terrorgeist, is a Flesh Eater. So, so yes, that's right.
He's not even technically. He is. It says Flesh Eater.
He is a Flesh Eater when you have another Strigi Ghoul King mounted on him. So what you want to do is, I'm calling it now, run a Ghoul King on foot as your general, and then Strigi Ghoul Kings on Terrorgeists to be buffed.
Yeah. Yes. I just love it. I love it. It's begging for the synergy. It's begging for the theme, and that just makes me smile.
Unfortunately, I'm going to have to bow out stage right here.
Okay, not a problem, buddy. Thank you for doing this. I'm going to look at everybody who's viewing. Stick with us. Stick with me because I'm going to keep going through this. Thank you, Tom. We'll have you on again, and I'll be tuning in. Don't forget, everybody, if you're a member, if you're a follower of this channel, you should be checking out both Tom and Vince on Warhammer Weekly on Wednesday nights. It's 8:00 Eastern.
It is 8:00 Eastern.
Great.
Yep.
Great.
And we normally go about an hour.
Great. I'll be tuning in. Thanks again.
Fantastic. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Okay, so we're going to continue on now. We're going to look at crypt ghouls, and again, don't forget the synergy with the Strigoi Ghoul King. So let's take a look at cryptars. Again, only 1 wound, but they got 2 attacks each, and not a bad 4-up before up. But again, that command ability makes that a 3-up, and you have other abilities that can actually increase this even further. You might be able to get a 2-up on either or both of these with some of the synergies. But let's also look at the number of attacks. Okay. The number of attacks is 2 each. So we have The Ravenous Corpse Eater ability. If you have more than 20 ghouls, crypt ghouls, they now get another extra attack. So you could potentially be looking at 3-ups or 3-up, 4-up with 4 attacks on the crypt ghouls. Let's also not forget the synergy with a corpse cart nearby. They're 10 in a unit, so when you're summoning them, you got 10 on a casting value of 5. If you happen to roll a 10, 11, or 12, or with modifiers get to that point, you get 20. That's just phenomenal. And here's another ability: they reroll hits they reroll rolls of 1 when you roll to hit if they're within 15 inches of a ghoul king. So the crypt ghouls, again, we're not even talking about the formations, which we'll get to in a second once we get further down the list. The crypt ghouls in large numbers with a ghoul king, with other buffs for multiple attacks, they do what they did before, but so much better. Yes, they don't have the poison ability where they used to get instant wounds. Who cares? They're going to get so many attacks, even though there's no rend. Your opponents are going to fail their armor saves. They're just putting so many attacks with the volume that they can in the unit. You want to take them, I would say, take the minimum 30. Because you're going to lose some, and you don't want to lose the ability to get the 3 attacks per. If you can do it, if you can swing it 40 and you're not comped or you're not limited in some way artificially, I mean, a unit of 40, you could just, all the formations, all the different geometric formations you can put these guys in with the same thing we're talking about with some of the things that Andy 2D6 has been unlocking on his videos, and I've been talking about, from the beginning as well. And there's been a couple other people that have done this on videos, although I haven't seen them as active. The name escapes me, but there was one guy early on that threw some of this stuff out. You still can do them, and you want to be able to do them with large clusters. And the other thing that you want to remember is that you take these large clusters, they don't have to be in all skirmished out. They can be in block formation, just like you saw them in 8th edition. But here's the other thing: you could have them in these large clusters and control board areas of the board, because remember, your opponent has to stop within 3 inches of an enemy model. So you can command entire swaths of the board with these large units that you get in the vampire counts. Okay, let's move on to Crypt Horrors. Also a flesh eater unit and a mordant unit, so they get a lot of those benefits from the other units, the heroes and the corpse card and whatnot. So just remember, look for those other enhancements. Crypt Horrors, I think, I don't know if they're necessarily got weaker, but they used to be basically trolls that were undead, which were just amazing. And now, trolls are, in the other army has gotten much better, in my opinion, or at least as good as the Crypt Horrors, just a little bit different mechanic. So, we're still seeing some good number of attacks, 3 attacks. These guys have 4 wounds each, nothing to sneeze at. 4 up to hit, 3 up wound, 2 damage each. I would like to see them have a larger range, but whatever. These are always one of my favorite units, just because of the theme and for the ability. They're from my converted army. They're giant werewolves. So just take a look at some of my videos or some of the stuff that I put out there. I love them. I get a lot of comments about them. They're actually bigger than the regular Crypt Horrors because I've kind of put the direwolf heads on top, and they look very, very werewolfy, and they look a little bit more scary, so people pay more attention to them. Okay, 5-up save, not so bad. Let's look at some of their abilities. Each time you make a wound roll of 6, for a Crypt Horror, it inflicts an extra point of damage, so 3 instead of 2. Yep, I'll take it. Models in this unit heal 1 wound in each of your hero phases. Okay, this is important. This is an important distinction. You see this in a couple of these war scrolls. I think we'll see this in the Vargulf as well. If you lose a model, there's no restoring of models with the Crypt Horrors. The mechanic they have is that they heal. So they are multi-wound unit. If you don't lose a model, it's going to start healing back in each of your hero phases another wound. If you lose the model, it doesn't come back. Okay, so there's no invocation of Nehek in Age of Sigmar, so you're not bringing these guys back. So the ability for you to recharge an entire unit of Crypt Horrors like you could before is gone. They're tough. They're definitely dangerous. They just don't have the same kind of, you're not going to be using them the same way. They can reroll fail to hits if they're within 15 inches of a Ghoul King. That's awesome. We're not talking about re-rolling ones like the Crypt Ghouls. We're talking about re-rolling any failed hits. that'll add up, especially because they have 3 attacks each. Yes, they only have a 4 up to hit, but that can be added. You can enhance that. You can definitely enhance that. All right, so summoning on a roll of 6, you get 3 of them. On a roll of 11, you get 6. Not so bad. I still love them. I'm still going to field at least a unit of 6 of these guys, and then have the extras that I used to have. I had 18 for 8th edition for the ridiculous occasions that I ran an entire unit of 18 or 2 units of 9. In this case, I probably would put about 6 in a unit, which just puts you around that 24 wound mark for a single unit, and then have some left over for potential summoning. Fantastic units still, just a little bit different utility and a little bit different in terms of their staying power. Moving to Vargulfs. If you're still with me live, let me just tell us, first of all, say thank you. It's about 1:20 on the East Coast. And let me just also say that Vargulfs are effing crazy now. Take a look at the description. I don't know if you can zoom in on that. I'm sorry if I haven't zoomed in such that you can read it, but go look in your war scroll. A unit of Vargulfs has any number of models. All right, I'm not going to be one of those idiots who goes and fields 10 or 20 of these guys in a unit, but they're no longer single models like they used to be. There's so much more. They can fly now too. You take a unit of 2 or 3 of these. If you have wound caps on units in your area, if there's no comp, whatever models you have, make sure you got a model. If you convert an appropriate model for this or use the stock one, I'm obviously going to be trying to convert. I was going to be converting a giant werewolf for 8th edition. Now I don't know what I'm going to do. I got to find something that's suitably bat-like. I mean, hell, this is a beefy model. It's got to be something more. I mean, I would probably then revert back to the metal one that GW sells. So just again, put it on a round base or keep it on your square. But it is much more worthy than it ever was, and it now can fly. The model previously couldn't fly, and it had wings. Now it can fly. Okay. If there are at least 10 models within 3 inches after a Vargulf piles in, okay, in the midst of combat, you get the chance to pile in. Now, when you pile in, if you've got a cluster of models, enemy models near you, it doesn't have 4 attacks as its base clause. It's got 6. All right, that's crazy. And you get extra attacks with some of the other modifiers we were talking about before. So go look at those synergies. You're going to get now. You're probably going to get 7 attacks. And one and you get 2 attacks with the dagger-like fangs. There's so much output on these models, and that those claws also are 2-inch range. So you just sit them behind a single or dual row of enemy models. You put these guys in a unit with 2 or 3. You put them in midst of a zombie unit or a skeleton warrior unit. My God, the amount of damage, the capacity that they can dish out, and they may not even be able to get attacked back except for shooting. They could take a very scary looking zombie unit or skeletal warrior and you stick them in the middle, and now you have something that just dishes out even more damage. And which one are you gonna attack? You go start attacking the Vargulf. He's got a 5+ save. Again, you can throw a Mystic Shield on there, and these guys are going to stand in there and they're going to heal. All right, because if they heal die 3 wounds at the end of each combat phase if they slew a model. Yeah, just focus fire. They get a lot of attacks. They're going to kill models. Go after the low wound count models first, and you're definitely going to get that mechanic that's going to kick in. And yeah, if you don't lose a model, I mean, you get 8 wounds, and a 10-inch move. I mean, there's so much you can do with these guys. They are very scary. And if you summon them, they are summonable. They're on the table. You take a unit of even just one of them. Now you can summon more of them. And on a summon of 7, okay, it's above average, but now you can take a unit. And let's see how many it says. I think it's just 1. You set up a Vargulf. Okay, you can summon a Vargulf. Still, you can get a free Vargulf. They're a mini monster. Okay, and I would definitely, I'm absolutely going to be taking a unit of 3 of these if I field them. Cairn Wraith. Okay, now the Ethereals are different in Age of Sigmar. In the Vampire counts, they used to be able to run very themed. I ran a themed army in one of the earlier games once I started learning a little more about the rules, and it was ethereal themed, and I like it. And one of the big things about ethereal is, and I'll read it for you, it ignores weapon rends when making saves for that unit. Now, that may not seem like a lot, but these ethereal units didn't have saving throws before. You either had a magic weapon and you could affect them, or you couldn't. You either had to use a magic spell, or it had to be a magical effect on your shooting, or they weren't going to be. They didn't take damage. You just didn't use any. You just didn't attack. You didn't roll the attacks. They were immune. Now not only can the Cairn Wraith fly, now he's only got a 6-inch move, but you can run him. You can have use Van Hale's Dance if you've got the right hero. But 6 inches is nothing to sneeze at. It's a single model. It's, it used to be that you could run them in a unit of like, 3 or more or whatever, but nobody really did. But now it's a single model, and that's huge. It's a hero, so it does take a hero slot if you have any kind of a comp, which again I don't really like. But if you're going to put some comping in your game, then you're going to have to make decisions about Cairn Wraiths. But Ethereal, the thing about that's important about Ethereal is that they've got a base 4-up save. No rending affects them. A cannon shot, you're still gonna have a 4-up save. If they're in terrain, if this hero is in terrain, it's got a 3-up save. If it's got a Mystic Shield on it, it's got a 2-up save. So you're gonna shoot cannons at this guy? No way. And he doesn't do. It's not that bad in terms of the first of all, it's a 2-inch reach on the attack. So again, you could just stick this guy in the midst of a unit, in the rank and file unit in a block formation, second rank, second row, or even third row if you want to. He's got 3 attacks. 4-up to hit is not bad. 3-up to wound is great. -1 rend 2 damage. Yes, these are really, really good to have on the battlefield. Just take one, because if you take one, now you can summon one, and it's only a casting value of 5, and that's awesome. And here's another thing I wanted to mention about summoning. Look, I know there's a debate. Some people feel that summoning is different the way I've been pitching it. They feel that anybody can summon anything. It's I don't agree with that, but play as you want. But let's take a look at this summoning thing. When we talked about the numbers of summoning, when you summon an entire unit of 10 or 15 or 10 or 20 models like zombies or whatever. You're adding, the numbers are working against you. You summon a Cairn Wraith or a Vargulf, it's 1 model. It only counts as 1 towards victory conditions. It's actually much more effective if you're concerned about your victory conditions to summon these single or small unit, small model units, because if you don't wipe out your enemy and you're starting to calculate the amount, the numbers, the percentages work in your favor to have fewer in the unit of tougher models when you summon them. So take a Cairn Wraith, take a Vargulf, unlock the ability to summon. And if you do bring one in, it's only 1 damn model. It's not going to be backbreaking like the potential of, say, summoning 20 zombies if you get a good roll on your summoning, or multiple summonings. If you're going to go to the zombie route, you're going the volume. You're going to be summoning as much as you can every single turn and hoping you get those high numbers when you roll. So Cairn Wraith, it's worth it, but I think it's got a roll. It's certainly got a roll. I think it's a support roll, certainly. You're not going to be sending the Cairn Wraith out on its own. It doesn't move fast enough for that, but it definitely can enhance heavily a unit. And if you're taking a very ethereal heavy army, then clearly this is going to be a hero you're going to be taking. Tomb Banshees, also a single model. I forget if you could take it as a unit before. I don't think you could. I think you could take it as like a champion upgrade for a unit of Crypt Horrors previously. It's not Crypt Horrors, Cairn Wraiths. Now I think the Tomb Banshee, while the Cairn Wraith kind of stock went down a little, but the Tomb Banshee kind of went up. Again, it's got a 4-up save. It ignores all rends. It can fly. It's only 6-inch move, but it's got a Ghostly Howl range of 10 inches. Used to be, I think, only 8 if I remember correctly. And it, you do the dice roll against your opponent's bravery. And if it suffers a number of mortal wounds equal to the difference between your dice roll and your opponent's bravery. A lot of units and heroes have 7s, 6s, maybe 8s. Very few have 9s or 10s. 10s are really just demons of chaos and undead type units. It's very uncommon to have 10s. Against mortal type units, you're going to have 6s and 7s. And you're going to roll 2 dice, and honestly, it may only be 2 dice, but you roll a couple of them, no armor saves, mortal wounds in the difference. So you just remove models, and if they happen to be 2 models or even more, like for instance ogres, you're removing 4 wound models every time, and they don't have the highest. I think they have maybe a 6. You go after those high wound, low bravery models and scream with the Banshee, and you're going to be getting a lot of value. And of course, again, you can summon them. If you take one, you can have more, and it's only a 5. You only get 1, but it's worth it. And I like that it has the Chill Dagger, only a 4-up, 3-up, but it's a -2 rend and a die 3 wounds. Definitely a worthy choice, especially if you're running an ethereal theme. Spirit Hosts. Now, they have less wounds than they used to. Obviously, ethereal is much less over the top powerful like it was before. And I never really thought it was over the top powerful. I mean, there's a lot of things that did magical attacks in 8th edition. Not so much. There's no magical attacks now. It's just a rending thing. So their stock went down a little bit, but they can fly, which means they can go over, they can ignore terrain pieces, they can ignore intervening enemy units, your own units. And they do have some offensive punch now, where before they were kind of, they were kind of like a tar pit unit. You get 2 or 3 of these, and they had 5 wounds. Now they only have 3 wounds, but they have an armor save. So that armor save is pretty good. And they're minimum of 3 in each, which is more than fine. That's 12 9 wounds. And now you get 6 attacks each. 6 attacks. I mean, again, only a +5. I mean, a 5+ on the to hit, but you can make that a 4+ very easily. 4 up to wound, only 1 damage, no rend. Okay, but here we go. Frightful Touch. If the hit roll for an attack made by a spirit host is a 6 or more, don't forget, you can roll a natural 6, or you can get +1s from a number of different options. And you have 6 attacks, so it's a good chance you're going to get at least 1 or 2 of these. The Spirit's Frightful Touch stills the victim's beating heart, immediately inflicting 1 mortal wound instead of its normal damage. So it converts it to a mortal wound. With that many attacks, you're going to get a couple of those. You're more than likely to. And then you can also summon these with a casting value of 5. You can get 3 of these. That's awesome. I love Spirit Hosts. I liked them before. I did a couple conversions to make some differences. There have been tremendous conversions for Spirit Hosts. Mine are all like, either infantry type guys, or they're an ethereal knight. But a lot of people did use very Empire troops or any other infantry rank and file. Hey, whatever you want to do it's not hard to do. It's easy to paint up. Get 6 of them. Get 3 you can deploy and 3 you can summon, and you're good to go. Hex Wraiths, easily in 8th edition my favorite unit of the entire Vampire Counts army. And I converted up a bunch that looked like ethereal questing knights for my Bretonnian themed Vampire Count army. A lot of work. I got, I think, 10 of them painted up, and 5 of them that I'm still sitting waiting to be painted. And they come in units of 5. They've got 2 wounds, not bad. 12-inch move, not bad. I think they're not as quite as I don't know if I would say broken. In previous editions, they would, they were brutal if they moved through enemy units. Now they don't move through enemy units; they fly. So they just gave them the fly mechanic. With a 12-inch move, they're going to be able to get through and around a unit. And their Spectral Hunter ability is this: after a unit of Hex Wraiths moves in the moving phase, you can pick an enemy unit it moved across. Now that doesn't mean you have to move through it. You don't have to get on the other side. You could do the same thing you did in 8th edition, where you could just kind of like move in and then move away, backtrack, go on an angle, just as long as part of your move went over that unit. But here, okay, so it says you pick an enemy unit, it moved across. Roll a dice for each Hex Wraith that passed across it. And for each roll of a 6, it suffers a mortal wound. Okay, so there's less of a chance that you're going to do that extra wound. But if you do a wound, it's a mortal wound, and you cannot. Mortal wounds are the name of the game. If the top of the heap in terms of what you should be considering is getting most dice, most volume of dice to force saves, which any unit or individual model can be wiped out if you get enough dice on it, and that's how this game works. The next thing that you need to be concerned with is how many mortal wounds can you dish out, and if Hex Wraiths can do that, that's just going to add up, and especially for high armored units or high value heroes or monsters, where you just need to kind of like knock them down a couple of pegs on their diminishing chart, and then they're a lot more manageable. So yeah, they don't do it as often, but here's what you get for it. You get, not only do you get more wounds, you get the 2 wounds apiece. They got armor. They're ignoring rend, but they're much more killy in the midst of combat. So the way you use these guys is you march them up, supporting Black Knights or Blood Knights or infantry units. You get them close enough so that you can bounce, across units and get those extra mortal wound chances on a 6 or more. If they happen to get into combat, though, they've got 2 attacks with their scythes, 4 up, 3 up, not bad. -1 rend. Always, any rend is good. Their horses, which are always the unsung hero of cavalry units, 2 attacks, also 4, 5 up, but no rend. That's 4 attacks each, and you're gonna have 5 of them. So they're going to be able to do some damage back. But here's what you do: you retreat with them, and when you retreat with them, guess what? They still get their Spectral Hunter ability. That's what you do with these guys. You utilize them to get in. Their force multiplier in terms of they add more attacks into the front line ranks. You put them where you need them most against the target you need them most. They have the mobility to focus on what you want to attack the most. And then if they get attacked, your option can be to retreat them out, and they still can do damage while they're retreating because they can move over units while they're doing that retreat move. That's how I would use them. And of course, with only a 6 up, you can get 5 more of them if you want. All right, Black Coach. All right, Black Coach. A lot of people have different feelings about the Black Coach. Some love the model, some hate it. I'm converting one. I've seen some really good conversions in them where they're like half flying or kind of half ethereal, kind of when with some of the enhancements that happened in the previous editions. They could turn ethereal, they can fly. I don't know if the Black Coach is quite as effective as it was before, but it's still very interesting. So let's go look through it. First of all, 7 wounds, a few more than before. Now armor of 4 up, not so bad. It doesn't start out with a ignoring rend. We'll get to that. It's got good attacks. It's got, it's nice offensively. It's got 3 attacks on the Reaper Scythe and 4 on the Nightmares that are pulling it. 4 up, 3 up, or 4 up. A -1 rend on the Cairn Wraith sitting atop it, and a 2 wounds, 1 for each of the Nightmares. Not bad. You can dish out some damage. It's got a good move of 10 inches, so it's a little bit faster than it used to be. And of course, you could always run it. All right, so let's look at some of the abilities. You can re-roll failed hit rolls with the Reaper Scythe if your target unit is 5 or more models. So guess what? You're going to be focusing this guy on volume units, not single models as much. Okay, Evocation of Death. In your hero phase, you roll a die for each death wizard from your army that's within 12 inches of this model. Okay, now for each 6 you roll, this is not, you used to roll for each die, if you got a 6, or even previous editions, it was even better. So for each 6 you roll, for each death wizard that's on the table that's within range, it gets boosted up in power. So it's got 5 levels of power. It used to, I think, have 6. First one, it can, if you roll a 6, you just start stacking these. After the Black Coach makes a charge, you select an enemy within 1 inch of the Black Coach, and it suffers die 3 mortal wounds. I just want to make a point also, by the way, that it's a single model. You're not running these. They're kind of chariot-like models, but you're not running them in units, and you didn't before, so that hasn't changed. So that die 3 mortal wounds for after it's been first tier. Die 3 mortal wounds if you make a charge and there's any units at the end of that charge within 1 inch. You try to charge it and get it kind of squared between 2 units, and you double that value, and that's great. Second tier, its move is 14, not bad, because remember, you can retreat, and that extra move is going to help you get within more than 3 inches away from an enemy unit when you do a retreat. But not a big boost for the second tier. Third tier, you add 1 to all its hit rolls. Hey, 3 up now to hit, that's not bad, and you can improve upon that with other abilities. On the 4th level, it can fly. Okay, it doesn't start out at fly, but now it can fly. And on the 5th level, it now can unbind as if it were an enemy wizard. You don't get the etherealness, the ethereal change, which kind of sucks, because if you've painted up one of these and it looks like it's half ethereal and half corporeal, it's not going to look quite as good. But so what? I think that still looks awesome. I still would include this in an ethereal themed unit. And I love them. I love what you can do with them. I love the conversions you can do and a lot of the creativity you can have with them. And I think that they're worthy of taking. I mean, it's only a single model, but there's definitely some benefit to that. What's the role? Hey, experiment. You tell me. I haven't run these. Well, actually, no, I did run this once, and it only went up to the 3rd tier, so it didn't really get boosted up where it had the unbinding ability. But that's a pretty big threat. It's not going to get boosted up quite as quickly as you might in games past, like in 8th edition, for instance, even because it's not based on the dice in the Magic phase. It's based on the number of Death Wizards on the table within 12 inches. And frankly, even if you had a bunch of Death Wizards, you still got to roll 6, and you're not going to be taking that many. I mean, in the Vampire Count's army, you're probably going to have a lot more a lot more casters than in the average army. But still, it depends on the size of your game. Depends on your style of play. Okay, Terrorgeist. I know if you're sticking in here live, you're probably waiting for a Terrorgeist. And yes, it deserves to be feared in the same way and reviled in the same way that it was in 8th edition. Terrorgeist is still with us, and it is still effing crazy. 14 wounds. It is a bona fide monster. It's a monster. The average is 12 inches on a monster. This guy's got 14. It's only a 5-up save, but I'll take it. It used to be 6-up, which sucked, and you can improve it in a number of different ways. It's a single model, so you can sit it on a terrain piece, and now you get the 4-up, and you can put a Mystic Shield on it. It's got a 3-up, so now you've got some armor value to a Terrorgeist. It's got a crazy amount of attacks, even if you don't put a Strigoi Gold King on it. But let's say you do. Now, like, again, if you put a Strigoi Gold King on it, you know, it's a flesh eater unit, a flesh eater, or whatever the other keyword is. And I guess that could be debated. I mean, you know, it doesn't say it. It says Death Monster and Terrorgeist. So, you know, I guess you could debate that fact. All right. Death Shriek. Everybody's going to talk about the Death Shriek because that's really what it's all about with the Terrorgeist. Let's also remember that the mechanic that you used to use in 8th edition, you summoned it, and in the shooting phase, you could still get the shooting. You could still do that because you have the hero phase when you do your magic, so you can summon a Terrorgeist, and then the shooting phase comes later, so you still can do it's shooting. And let's look at this a little closer. When you summon a unit, you can't be within closer than 9 inches away from an enemy unit. Well, you've got a 10-inch Death Shriek. So guess what? You can summon this puppy within 9 inches and still be able to shoot that Death Shriek on an enemy unit the same turn. So what does it do? Before it gets wounded, it gets 3 dice, which is compared against your opponent's bravery. For whatever the difference is, it's a mortal wound. That's pretty crazy. That's a lot. Okay. Now 14 wounds. It's got a bunch of things. It's really all about that Death Shriek, but now it's got so much more survivability than it did before. No longer are you really going to take that one cannon to the face with a Terrorgeist and it's gone. But what you will take is if you did a lot of shooting against this Terrorgeist, the truth is that it's going to get diminished in its power like any other monster, which I think is a good mechanic in the game. But it's less likely that it's going to get wiped off turn 1. Why is that the case? First of all, it's got armor, it's got more wounds, and a Terrorgeist heals in your hero phase, die 3 wounds if it slew any enemy models in the previous turn. That's the previous turn. Okay, so you get this guy in hand-to-hand combat, or if he shrieks something, you just put a marker down, and you know that he's going to get die 3 wounds back the next time your turn comes around. Yes. Infested. No longer is this an upgrade. It's in default now. When a Terrorgeist is finally destroyed, it explodes. All right. When it does this, it's all right. When it inflicts die 3 mortal wounds to each unit. Unfortunately, it's also friends as well as foes within 3 inches of it. Now it's a big unit. It's got big wings, got a big tail. This thing is going to reach a large portion of the table. So it's likely going to be positioned close to enemy. Hopefully, you'll be smart and you'll try to maneuver it a little bit further away from some of your friendly units. You may not have a choice, but consider that you want to be further away from any other unit in your army. If it has a chance to die, you want to be further than 3 inches away. But if you're close to an enemy, which is probably what's going to happen if you're in combat, certainly, I mean, this thing can get shot off the table easily, magicked off the table, sure. But if you're close hand to hand when it dies, hey, here's a bonus, die 3 more mortal wounds to your enemy. Hopefully not to you as well. If you put up a Strigoi Gold King on it, it just increases the killie factor. It used to be that a Terrorgeist was not that great in hand-to-hand combat. Even without the Strigoi Gold King, man, it is a rough thing to have in hand-to-hand combat. It is dragon capable. I mean, this thing is just as scary as any dragon in the game, if not more. So it gets 4 attacks on its claws, 4-up, 3-up, -1 rend, die 3 wounds, and then let's get to the Fanged Maw. 3 attacks. 4-up, 3-up, -2 rend, and die 6 wounds. Anything that is failed, any failed saves does die 6 wounds. That is amazing. If you got a Strigoi Gold King on it, 5 more attacks at 3-up, 3-up, -1 rend, only 1 wound each. But God, if you can get that ability off where you get +1 to every attack in your profile on the Terrorgeist, oh wow, this thing goes up to, it also goes up to 11. It is incredible. Grave Call, if you got a Gold King on riding it, it can use a ability, which is it's a spell cast on a 6, and it can add die 6 models to every unit of Crypt Ghouls within 9 inches. So again, if you're rolling a Crypt Ghoul or a Flesh Eater themed army, yeah, get 2 units and have them sitting not too far from a Gold King riding a Terrorgeist, and you're just going to be growing those units. That's the beauty of that, okay? Because even if you have only a few, you now can add models more than summoning. You can grow the units, and if you lost any and you lost your ability to get extra attacks because you're now below 30 or below 20 or whatever, I think it's just below 20. I think the mechanic is 20 on ghouls. But now if you've gone below those thresholds, you can now grow it. That's great. Let's see. You can summon a Terrorgeist. Hey, that's not never a bad thing. Of course, you do have to roll a 10, so that's kind of tough. But you do have a lot of options in this army to add pluses. You get plus 2, 3, 4 in this army with all the synergies. Yeah, if you stack it right, you absolutely can summon a Terrorgeist. And that was it was tough to do in the previous edition. You can do it now. Put one on the table, get some more. And the command ability, flesh on flesh. Now, this command ability is only if you have a Strigoi Ghoul King on the back, but a lot of people forget. Well, it's not only that. A lot of people forget that you can make a general anything in your army. You pick a model. It doesn't have to be a hero. It doesn't say that. You can have any model. You can have the skeleton, on the right corner of your block unit be the general. It doesn't have to be. There's a merit to that, because if you have a large unit of skeletons or zombies, your generals, it's going to be hard for your general to get sniped out because it's not a hero. It's a model. So go read that. Go read that again. It does not have to be a hero, but you can make a Terrorgeist your command, can give a command ability. But this one, excuse me, I have to take this back. This one says a Terrorgeist ridden by a Strigoi Ghoul King can use this ability. So I have to backtrack on that. It is only if it is a Ghoul King on the back and if it's your general, because you don't get command abilities unless it's a general. You pick a flesh eater unit within 18 inches, ghouls, crypt horrors, vargulfs. That unit can run and charge during this turn. Let me say that again. You can run and charge. So you've got fairly fast moving units. You have the ability in some cases to actually pile in again a second time and get extra attacks with units that can get multiple attacks already, or enhancements, to hits and wounds, depending on the synergies with other things we've already talked about. And if you have this command ability, you can do the charge. You can run and charge, which means you can get closer to your enemy and potentially charge, if not turn 1, at least get in there in turn 2 from much further away. I love the abilities that provide that. If it's not innate and it's something that you add on through a mechanic of some kind of spell or an innate ability, or even if it's a command ability, those things where you can do things like run and charge, run and shoot, love those. Those are things you got to watch out for. That is a great ability. It's one of the singular reasons why you would take a Terrorgeist with a Strigoi Ghoul King, beyond all the other obvious ones. Okay, let's move on to the Zombie Dragon. Very few people took a Zombie Dragon in the previous edition. Why? Because first of all, it took a lot of points. You had to put a Vampire Lord on it. It was ate up too much of your Lords and Heroes percentage, and it also was very easy to die, and not so much now. This Zombie Dragon stock has gone up so much compared to where it was before. So let's take a look at this. First of all, you take it as just a Zombie Dragon. You don't have to take it with a Lord on it anymore. It's an option. So now you can just get the Zombie Dragon kit. I have one that's converted with magnets that I can be either a Terrorgeist or a Zombie Dragon. I'm going to make a friggin' Zombie Dragon just by itself with an option whether or not I want to ride her or not now, because I just love the idea of a Zombie Dragon. So let's take a look. It's got a 9-inch range on its Pestilence Breath, so a little bit shorter than Terrorgeist. 4 up to hit, but to wound, it starts at 2. Not bad. -1 Ren, die 6 damage. Yes. If you have a vampire on its back, it's got the Death Lance. It's got you're either using a Death Lance or a sword, and that's nothing to sneeze at. You got either another 3 or another 4 attacks. Really good to hit in wounds of 3 up. Decent Rens of -1, and either a 2 or a die 3 on the wounds. And if you charge, you get 3 on the lance. Awesome. And not only that, if you have a Vampire Lord on the back of it, you can take it with an Ancient Shield. Why wouldn't you? And guess what? Your 3 up now goes to a 2 up. I mean, excuse me, your 4 up goes to a 3 up. And hey, I'm thrilled. 3 up on a Zombie Dragon. Yes, that's great, phenomenal. Those you're going to need some good Rens to start doing damage to the Zombie Dragon, unless you're doing mortal wounds. And 14 wounds, awesome. All right, you don't get anything but more. You don't get any more wounds if there's a Vampire Lord on it. Of course, it can fly. Let's take a look at some of its other abilities here. Its Pestilence Breath. If the roll is equal to or less than the number of models in the target unit, the attack scores a hit without needing to make it a hit roll. I've seen this mechanic a couple of times. I like it. Obviously it benefits you if you're attacking larger units. So I certainly would still go after heroes or individual models because of the damage you can do with it. But you could start withering away at enemy units. The hunger, all right. So if it heals a wound at the end of each combat phase in which it killed an enemy model, you're probably going to kill an enemy model with this thing, unless you're just going toe to toe with another behemoth. All right. The Chalice of Blood, once per battle. That's if you have a Vampire Lord. You can use the chalice to drink, and in doing so, you heal die 6 wounds. So there is a method for you to heal back some of the wounds on this ridiculous model. Again, there's so many reasons to take a zombie dragon now, even more so to take it with a Vampire Lord on back. And of course, if you have a Vampire Lord, he is a caster, so he's going to be able to cast a spell and be able to unbind enemy spells. And of course, this thing is going to get up into the fight. It's going to be able to move. It has a 14-inch move to start, which gets lower, just like most monsters. Things get weaker, but 14 inches to start. It's going to be a while before you get below 10. So it's going to be able to fly. You can retreat with this thing if it gets stuck in a combat you don't want to be in, or if you want to get to where someplace else you need it to go. And you can heal it, but it also can cast, and because you're up close, you can unbind, and you only need to be within 18 inches. Of course, you need line of sight, but because it's a big model, it's probably going to see over a lot of obstructions that might hide a enemy wizard. Blood Boil. The Vampire Lord utters a curse that causes his foe's blood to boil. All right, this is another spell. It's a special spell for the Vampire Lord on a zombie dragon. Casting value of 6. You pick an enemy unit. That unit suffers a mortal wound. If the model was wounded but not slain, you roll another die. On a 4, it suffers another mortal wound. If the model is still not slain, you do it again. All right, it will suffer another mortal wound on a 4+, and you keep doing it till you either fail the roll or the model it dies. Yes, that's one of those. Most armies have one mechanic like this, where you just keep rolling, and if you just go on a roll, if you're you can wipe something out in one turn. It's the odds are much against it, but it can happen. And frankly, it's just a wonderful thing to see. It's not a wonderful thing to have happen against you. Don't forget about that. It's a nice ability. That Blood Boil ability is pretty cool. He's a death wizard, so he's going to, of course, gain any of the spells that are unlocked by virtue of you deploying units that can be summoned. And guess what? You can summon a zombie dragon. Yes. 10 up, you could summon a zombie dragon. Same like you could summon a Terrorgeist. Why not? Try it. Plus, use some of the synergies to make that 10 up a little bit easier. So there's more reasons to get more zombie dragons, just like more Terrorgeists. Now, if a Vampire Lord is riding it, it now has a command ability if you pick it as your general, and which can happen, and it certainly should. There's nothing wrong with the ability to pick a unit within 15 inches, and now you can reroll fail to hits with that unit. Now, let me address this again. There's a lot of abilities in this army that allow you to enhance units to add pluses to hit, pluses to wound, more attacks, and re-rolling now. You can stack these, and it depends on the kind of army that you're looking to play, but you can't have everything, of course, unless you're just having a massive crazy game, which eventually I'll try to test out and see how that works. But there's a lot of options to mitigate some of the deficiencies of what you might see in a zombie or a skeleton in just a small unit. But you take them in large units and you add some of those enhancements, man, they get scary. So don't discount the fact that you're a Vampire Lord and a zombie dragon. He may be very killy and do a lot of great things, but that command ability is not bad. Re-rolling fail to hits, not re-rolling ones, not re-rolling ones and twos, just fail to hits is awesome. And I'm very happy that the zombie dragon in and of itself is more effective, but I'm also even more happy that a zombie dragon or a zombie dragon with a Vampire Lord on it is now viable to take, because you don't have to worry about points. All right, let's take a look at the formations. The formations are so fluffy and so appropriate for this army. Now, I wish there were more. That's the only thing I have negative to say about them. I wish there were more of these formations. I'm only hoping that in some of these armies that only have 1 or 2, or don't have any great ones, that they unlock more of them with future war scrolls, with future units that they release, because it's entirely likely that they're going to be releasing more units Even if they repackage, a lot of times when they repackage these units with the rounds and reissue them, they also issue a scroll. Look what happened with the Sylvaneth, the Treekin army. Look what they're doing with the Skaven now. So they usually give you another formation or another series of scrolls, whatever. So I'm hoping that more of this stuff gets unlocked as they move through some of the existing armies. So let's take a look at these two. Both of them are viable. I've played them both a couple of times. I even have a couple of bat reports that I put up videos early on when I was kind of testing the game. So let's take a look. Death Rattle Horde. You need a White King, 1 unit of Black Knights, a unit of Grey Guard, and 3 units of Skeletal Warriors. Pretty cool. Very, very skeletal oriented, very dry, obviously, dry themed in terms of the army. And what it has is it has this thing called unbreakable ranks. Now, you have all these units. You have 4 units, 5 units, and then a character. And any of these units are within 6 inches of each other can reroll save rolls of 1. So if your armor save is a 3 up or a 4 up or even a 5 up, and you roll a 1, you have more than 1 unit. You have 2 more units within 6 inches of each other from this battalion, and you can re-roll that save. That's great. That's great. Even if you get a 5 up, any ones that you roll, which are gonna, there's gonna be plenty of them, especially if skeletons, even a unit of zombies. Zombies, unless you put something, you have another reason that they don't have any saves, so they're not going to get the benefit. But you're not going to have that in this horde. Now that I'm thinking about it, so that was kind of a silly statement. Skeletons, Graveguard are going to start out with a 5 up. They're going to have a 4 up if they have a shield. That's not bad. No rends applied. You're only failing on a 2 or 3. If you roll a 1, you get to re-roll. I mean, that's great. Then you have this March of the Dead ability. All right, so when it says when a unit from a Death Rattle Horde runs, you can choose to move each model an additional 4 inches instead of rolling to see how far they can move. An additional 4 inches. All right, so you got a minimum on how far they can run. You roll die 6. Sometimes you roll a 1. Sometimes you roll a 2 or 3. Here you're going to have at least a 4. All right, you don't have to worry about having a shitty roll, a bad roll on your run, and maybe you wasted that extra mechanic and lost out on something else with the unit. This is a more fast moving formation, not a bad formation, and certainly it can be a component of your army. It doesn't have to be the entirety of your army. Just anything else that's not part of the Death Rattle Horde won't gain any of the benefits. So you want to take these ranks of infantry and then at least 1 unit of Black Knights, and then keep them close to each other, and they get these great abilities, and they have a little bit better of a fast moving component to it as well. Not bad. I ran it once. This one I ran it once. I ran the other one twice. So I like this one even better. Flesh Eater, Charnel Pit Carrion. Oh, awesome. All right, so you got a Strigoi Ghoul King or a Strigoi Ghoul King on a Terrorgeist. Why not? Pick one. I like the one on the Terrorgeist, but there's merits to having the one with the Ghoul King dismounted as well because of his command ability. 1 unit of Crypt Horrors, 3 units of Crypt Ghouls. Remember that ability now. If you had more than one, you could have 2 units of Crypt Ghouls where you can get that enhancement from the Ghoul King on a Terrorgeist. All right, so let's look at some of the abilities for the formation. These creatures will fight furiously to this lair of the Flesh Eaters, furiously defend their lair. Okay, let's move on. After setup is complete, you pick 1 piece of scenery to be a Charnel Pit. Models from a Charnel Pit Carrion Battalion can make 1 extra attack with each of their melee weapons, whilst this unit is within 15 inches of this piece of scenery. All right, so after you complete the setup, you have all the scenery placed. You take a piece of scenery, you get it for free. It's very similar to the Sylvaneth thing where they can get some Sylvaneth wood. You place it on the battlefield. You all you have to do is stay within 15 inches, and you get an extra attack. You already get crazy amount of attacks with Cryptars and Crypt Ghouls, and you can add on to them with other abilities, and now you get another one. It's just an army of blending. Unnatural Vigor. Consuming the flesh of the dead prolongs the life of these foul beings, making them all but impossible to kill. All right. Basically, you add 1 to their save rolls if the battalion wipes out an enemy unit. So you go after the weaker units, you go after singular models, and you delete them. And now you get a +1 to all save rolls for that unit for the rest of the battle. Okay. not it says only one unit can benefit from this from this ability per battle. We're not talking about the combat. We're talking about the battle, the game. Okay, so you just want to get one of these units in there and wipe out a unit, which is it's going to happen. You have a lot of these units that have the option of this, and then you basically get a free +1 to their saves for the rest of the game. Yeah, I don't know what I'd pick. I don't know if I'd pick the Terrorgeist or a unit of Cryptars or a massive unit of Cryptgoals, but you know what? It's nice to have options. That's a pretty good War Scroll. I like that. More attacks, better save, lots of conditions for it. I just think it's an awesome set of options between the Charnel Pit and the Death Rattle Horde. Both of these are pretty good. I wish there were more of these. And again, I like to think that we're going to see more of these. I'm very happy with this army in general. I know that we haven't talked about the special characters, but I'm just going to give you a quick overview in terms of my thoughts about vampire counts. There's a ton of synergies, guys. Look at them. Look at other armies as well, but the vampire counts have great synergies, and their themes are really cool. If you like vampire counts, you're going to love what they are in Age of Sigmar. You're going to love how they fit really well with Tomb Kings. The things that were before are definitely potentially brutal now with the right combinations. Things that were tough before are just as tough, and some of the awesome models that you may have had doubts about putting on the battlefield before, they have a place. They absolutely have a place. Some of the coolest kits in the vampire counts, whether they're conversions or they're models from other lines, but even some of the newer kits like the Mortis Engine Coven Throne, great looking models. If you like any of the recent stuff from the End Times, you're going to love this as well. We're not even talking about that though. We're just talking about the standard vampire counts models that you saw up until End Times. This is a tough army. It's not a shooting army. It's got some short range shooting ability. You don't have cannons, but you get in there with a lot of stuff, a lot of volumes of units or beefy units that when they get in there, it's not just about the vampire lord anymore. That's the point that I wanted to get back to. I took a little detour there. It used to be that you just needed a vampire lord, and you want for an 8th edition, and you had to get that vampire lord into the combat, and everything else was a vehicle to get your vampire lord there. Or you took a necromancer and his goal was just, counter spells and summoning, which was okay. There's certainly great ways that you could have taken large, massive zombie hordes and just, tar pitted your opponent, until you managed to kill off more of his stuff than yours. Not exciting, but definitely effective. This army is now a faster mobile army with lots of options and tremendously killy stuff. And if it gets within range of your army, you're going to be in a world of hurt. You need to shoot this army down, and hey, you need to wipe it out. You need to wipe out units completely because they will recharge, regenerate, or you could summon more, and that's all around going to be scary. So have fun with your vampire counts. If you liked them before, you're going to love them now. And hey, guys, one more thing. Tune in tomorrow. I've got a Warriors of Chaos unlocking I'm going to be doing sometime around midday Eastern time, and we'll see about how many more I can get done this week, and maybe into next week. I'll see if I can finish these up and we can start circling back and talking about the special characters and then some of the synergies between these units, and then talk about some other issues that people have been talking about, like balance and counter shooting and counter spells and all that other stuff. You have strategies behind that, formations and whatnot. But if you have any requests or comments, please send them in. I'll try to address as many of them as I can. And hey, thank you for tuning in and sticking through. If you went all the way to the end, have a good night and have a great day, everybody.